And we're on air. Welcome everyone to the school committee workshop on our visioning and graduation policies so that we can get an update of where we are going into this year. And we will have presentations around those by Michelle, Shelley, and apparently supported by Scott, which is a very good thing. I'd like to have that. There's been some question on format of a workshop. A workshop is a opportunity for the school committee to get further information on what's going on in the district, or policy background, or information that we feel we need to act appropriately on the benefit of our students. It is a workshop for the school committee, and we ask staff to come and help us understand, perhaps explain where we're headed and how we're getting there. It is not an opportunity for the public to question our staff. That is our responsibility. If the public has a need for additional information, they can direct their questions to members of the committee or to the administrative staff, and we will respond appropriately. Given if there is an opportunity at the end of this, if there are members of the public that wish to question the committee, we would open it up to questions, but it is not an opportunity. I want to restate that. It is not an opportunity for the public to question our staff. We are the interface. We are the public's representatives, and the public has every right to ask us the questions and for us to find those answers. But it is not an opportunity for us to bring someone, a teacher or a staff member, before us to be grilled or questioned by the public at that point in time. So I want that clear and understood. That is the function. That's how this works. It has worked this way for many, many years, and it's the best way. It protects our employees, as employees are protected in every business and every organization. If it were appropriate for the public to have access to employees, that would be happening everywhere, and it does not. So I want to be clear on that. If we, as a board, wish to open up so that there are members on this board that feel it is appropriate that the public can question directly a staff member or a teacher, it would be unfortunate in my opinion. But there's an opportunity to discuss that afterwards. But at this point, this is the way this meeting will be conducted. Bonnie?
I just shared with Mary Tucker that this is also a time for us to dialogue among ourselves on it, that we have not had very many opportunities that we can sit and talk and learn and listen on it. So I see this as, Shelley, I have a question. I have a question to you. So what do you think, Pat, on it? That's how I look at this also, as a dialogue for us to learn for ourselves what's going on, and to discuss it and to figure out if we like it or not like it on it. So I think we haven't had many of these opportunities. I'm sorry I missed the one in April, but I think that this is important for us to dialogue and become a committee.
Important to note also, it's against the law for 4 of us to gather and have that kind of dialogue offline.
That's right.
So that we have to have these types of committees. We have to have these meetings in public with the group here in order to have that dialogue take place. So that's the reason for a workshop. It keeps us above board and transparent, and that's why it happens in this forum. So with that introduction, we shall begin.
So the first part of this is going to be focused on the vision, and then the second part will be focused on the graduation policy. So as you recall, last year, and I lose track of time myself, when we were talking about the new high school and Vision 2020, that's not that far away. So we talked about rebooting the vision to push out another 10 years. And so the direction really was getting some feedback around the current vision. What are some changes? Because visions are always things you're reaching for. You know, when we look at the vision and we're planning our budget or we're planning professional development, we use this as a guide for us. And for our community to hear, community read, oh, this is what the school department is working on, and this is their vision for the future. So last year, we got a lot of feedback around rebooting it, not a total rewrite, but what could we do for another draft? So a second draft was created by David Stevens. When he was with us as part of Harriman, he also contracted with us to help take all that feedback. I mean, it's a lot, when you get a lot of feedback and then you have to whittle it down and repar it, he did the rewrite. So what it's now doing, it's gone to administrators, it's going back out to teachers, it's gone to PTOs to get their feedback. And tonight is your opportunity to weigh in as things that you like, things that you would like to see changed, and then we're going to take all that feedback and bring you what we would like as a first reading. So this is an opportunity for you to weigh in as well. So what I'm going to have you do is in partners, Bonnie loves this kind of work, in partners we're going to look at the old vision, and then we're going to look at the redraft vision, and on the card you can write things you like and things that you're wondering, could these be changed? You're welcome to write on the document. I'm just collecting everything. You'll also notice at the top, our mission statement has been reading empowering lifelong learners to succeed in a world yet imagined. There are two other options, which are empowering lifelong learners to succeed in today's fast-changing world, or empowering lifelong learners to succeed in an ever-changing world. Ever-changing world is bubbling to the surface as the one. Last time I looked at teachers' response, we were 128, and about 62% said they liked ever-changing. PTOs have been weighing in. Fairview's, Sherwood Heights PTO said 6 liked ever-changing, 3 liked world yet imagined. I think what we have to recognize with crafting these things is we could recraft these over and over and over again. It's never going to be perfect as long as what our message is being communicated. That's what's most important. So we will take the feedback we're getting in wordsmith, maybe some more. Other feedback is it's still too long, but and then some people said we really like it. We like that you've pared it down, and it's responding to that. So it's just going to be probably something, this really does stand for us. It may not have everything, because a vision can't be everything we're doing, but it can give us a guiding post on where we want to be. So I'm going to give you the next 20 minutes to really look at the old draft, the new draft, and talk about, you can underline words too that say we really like these words, or we think this is missing. Could we relook at that? And then you'll share out.
So let's be clear about this. David Stevens did not write this in a vacuum.
Oh, no.
He worked with our staff.
Mm-hmm. And he was at the public forum. His public forum, he took feedback there as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then everybody needs that. So everybody needs a copy of the current one.
I do want to be your partner.
Yeah.
Always want to be your partner.
Okay. So you two are going to, do you want to go, you two, you and Dan, and then you want to come down, and Scott, you can come over here. And you can be with Bob, Tom?
Sure.
Okay. And here, I'll give you your index card to write your notes.
Did you get this one, Dan, the new one?
Yes, I did.
Tom, did you get a redraft? Okay. Tom's coming down to your end of the table.
No, I'm just going to collect your card.
Oh, boy.
So how are we working this?
Tom, here, Tom down here. Tom's coming.
I hope Bob has a pen.
Here's one.
Good deal.
This is 2017. Public law, 2017.
It's your work time.
Oh, what did you want to get to?
We found 2015.
I can put my glasses on to read it, Bob. You got to take yours off?
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I don't know. Like bifocals, I guess.
That's what they put out, so.
That's right.
Hi, girls. Oh, good. You can participate too.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Straight from the game. There we go. I guess the easiest thing to do is take it kind of one in my line.
Was Scout Egan, right?
Oh, this was Skowhegan.
Vision
I like the
Noble
hair.
effort. Noble effort, yeah.
now, and then we'll just, this is the new one, what options right here. This is what we are right now, World Yet Imagined. That's that one. And if we've got terminology that we'd like or don't like or nothing, we don't care.
Line by line. For paragraph by paragraph. Well,
line to line.
I actually like what we've got.
The first one.
Yeah, I do like that.
This is the old vision and the new vision. This is the.
I actually like this one better.
Pretty much. Just mean the same.
I like interrated,
In the Yale girl, one
so I like the bullet of this one. The
KVAC
bullet
cross
of this one over this one.
Yeah, she's timed her. I get timed her a couple times. She blows most of the boys away.
That's good to see what was changed.
She's got a good shot at the States. Saw her last year. She's really doing
They
well.
just combine these other two.
Awful nice girl too.
I like that.
Have you got
These.
either a reword of any of those, or do you like one better than the other?
Yeah, the last one.
Okay, that's the same. Good job.
You lift that.
Well, I mean, that's,
That-
we were trying to get to the meat of it. Yeah, it wasn't, you know. In, like I
you gotta
remind you,
imagine
this
it's
isn't a
just-
first
Yeah,
reading.
I like that too.
I like it too.
This is a
I like it better than what we're
conceptual-
changing. I like it better in fast changing.
Here's what
So I'd
we're
like to
doing
stay
big
with it.
picture. So,
Okay.
Oh, that's,
yeah, we kind of missed
So
that
then we can
intro
go on to
paragraph.
the reword.
it was
of-
nice.
oh, it
It's
is
a
that.
draft.
Okay, never
It's
mind.
not
I didn't
done.
see that one. Yeah, I get the wrong one.
I like this one better. Because it incorporates, that.
It's fine.
Mark and I were together for like 2 hours. It was good. Took the map off. This is where we are now.
Join one of the two groups on either side of you,
You can lean
and they
right
can
or
catch you
left.
up.
Your preference.
Okay.
Actually,
Because I
reviewing
hear a lot about this.
the vision policy. We need a, okay, read that.
And I think we are doing a lot.
So we're,
for kids that are college.
we're starting with the vision statement, which one we like, whether reworded or not. Then we're just kind of working it down through and see, this is the new one, this is the existing, comparing them, seeing if there are points that you really like or don't like, or change wording or anything of that sort. And you can lean in with Dan and Pat, or you can lean in with Bob and I, whichever you want.
Is everything okay with the daughter-in-law?
Well, we don't know, still some more testing going on. But
First one's on there.
as soon as I can get my bag up there.
That's right. Bob and I, just to catch you up, Bob and I both like the current one compared to these two options.
The mission statement,
Yeah.
yeah.
This phrase is gone, but the rest of it's.
Oh, I see.
Fast change.
I like this.
Yeah, I like that best. Of the options, it's concise, yet it really lets you,
No, I do like that. I think we can keep, so what if we keep it
yeah,
little
yeah,
notes?
just a little note that we like to keep, that's what I'm gonna do.
It's a nice
So then we're working on to the next
Hold on this, we want to.
statement. So that's the existing one, and they're trying to shorten it.
and toes. What was the final spot? Was that
Well, yeah, can you fully imagine, that kind of repeats with something.
Yes, it does, yeah.
Redundant.
I took my husband and daughter to the breast.
Really what, well,
They gave which I was fine, but
Yeah, we had a good time. We haven't been to a game for a long time.
I like the last one. Yeah. Kind of gives you
everyday content, school homework, and
Compared to going to.
Down to Portland and Gray to get on.
Oh, really?
like the fastest world in the global economy, but I don't want to miss this over here because
Driving down to Portland,
Right.
getting, yeah.
one element in community.
And it's a direct bus, right? You don't have to change over to
To
Portland?
this.
Or do you go to Portland and then?
Well, that's not here.
Oh, excellent. That's good to know.
I don't talk on it.
Fast changing.
Todd speaks, I'm like, well, that's a.
They just, it's very short.
Again, I don't like it up here and I don't like it down there either. So I was gonna drop that entirely, and my thought was to, again, keeping it short and concise, to be successful in today's world and tomorrow's global.
Well, at least for me.
Now tomorrow's global economy.
Make sure you remember.
Concise, so that was my
that sounds
thought.
What are you doing for?
You had interest in trying to incorporate this.
Yeah, I mean, this is going overarching,
writing.
far out.
Right,
and
right.
I think that we don't need
Taking a business class, an online business class through CM, and then
we need to
like
make
advanced Spanish.
their school.
She thinks it's harder. Well, her schedule is harder than last year, but my schedule is better than last year.
Fast changing world will cover world.
I really want to go to Providence. That's my number one right now. Business. It's just on my top. Thank you.
So I wouldn't say work because they're not
Right,
working
yeah, I
yet,
know,
but, skills.
But
to
that's
be
the future, that's
successful.
what we're trying to prepare them for, and that's what it
Right.
says, finally, be successful in tomorrow's world.
Yeah, yeah.
Put it right on the computer. He had the computer, I had the paper.
This we want to use right here.
That's out there.
But see, we're gonna pass that out after this.
The world and
Okay, yeah.
Community, see, this is about the community, right? Because this is where you want parents, family, to community part, right?
With home,
That's a good idea.
starting with home, school and community.
So we weren't flurrying papers.
No, I think we flurry.
Flurry papers.
We can flurry.
We'll flurry.
today's.
I should have brought down the big board, I forgot the big
Yeah,
board.
yeah, in today's
Into
world and
today's world and
to tomorrow's global economy.
Yeah, so I like that better.
Okay, let's write, you can write it on the back, or we can write it on notes on this, just how you phrase that out. Did you hear that? What she came up with? Yeah, I mean, that's what she's doing.
And, well, you could do, and ensure that all students are, yeah.
Points, and see if there are words or things that are good, bad, or need to be reworded.
I tend to take out the and the, like,
Yeah, I do a lot of that,
acquires
yeah.
fundamental knowledge. With home,
Great idea. That's a good idea.
There was nothing nowadays. There was a couple of lines. The majority of them, like it was good, which were fair.
You want an and right there, and
Which one is mine?
a home, school, and community? Into, school and community, into, yeah.
Oh, those are their exit tickets on workshop
and
day.
community entities.
Sign up to be
retired. So I think that's a good one.
Okay, so,
That
Bob,
one's done.
you can read her right?
And read my writing.
That's, every student acquires fundamental knowledge. Okay,
I made it clear. I don't use those
March.
Well, too, but I need to know that you guys participated in this.
Well, if you did that book, I was gonna give you Pinky.
Oh, okay, plenty of time, don't worry.
You all set? That sound pretty good?
Yep,
I think
sounds great.
you've
Okay.
talked to them about each department's plan to look at their progressions now and look at their courses now and figure out what their essential parts are. Because we can apply that at any point. Doesn't
Somewhere, hey, I don't think I should pair any.
Yeah, like, it's hard to write for me.
really better by course.
And that's, you made it really clear with them, that's why, like, of course, why should be that.
Find it about or something.
Topic at my meeting next week at CIA. It's like, okay guys, tell me how we get this done, like, how do we do it?
Sure, I go, see learning as an ongoing process of continuous gains being celebrated along the way. What does that add to it? I mean, I understand that, see learning, I mean, we'd want them to understand it's a lifelong process. You're learning throughout your lifetime. We want them to grasp that. This isn't static, it's always changing. But I'm not sure about why we need to have being celebrated along the way. That doesn't add
I
anything.
have my group coming to do some data work.
Phrase just doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be an ongoing lifelong process. I mean, I might add lifelong. You know, see learning is a lifelong process. I don't see with continuous being, I mean, I don't even see it with continuous gains. I don't see that. I just see learning is an ongoing lifelong process.
I think what the essence of that probably is that, it's ongoing, but that there's a knowledge that
I am,
there's some
I'm
growth.
sending out the agenda for staff meeting.
You were making this like,
Like, it's not, I wanted to say Salvation Army, but I put it United Way. Like, what is that word? I can see it.
Well, the others were short too, but.
you're not done? Are you okay?
I look at that and say, you know, you get out in the real world. Your goals and gains aren't necessarily celebrated along the way.
No, but maybe that's important to be something. Something when process.
When you get down to here, I would change
Yeah, make notes,
Space
from
allocation.
board to school committee.
okay? Just make notes, yeah?
Work, or say,
Since I think in the city charter it's mentioned
Yeah,
committee.
yeah.
see learning's on.
Extras too, right?
Celebrated games. I would say maybe celebrated games. Celebrating games, something about.
His classes to read, I need to take my
You just have opposite eyes.
I'm trying to relate that to life after school, and school being just, the only celebration is if you get an A type thing. To me, this makes assumptions about
That was the thing that
the real
happened to
world
me in that
that I don't think they really exist.
without being able to see it.
A couple of years ago, I was driving, I didn't even notice I was
acknowledging people's names.
But who's then acknowledging? Are we trying to talk about the student here acknowledging their own gains? Yeah, I know, but is is the student to acknowledge their own gains?
Oh my gosh, and you need them for distance?
I need them to drive.
Alfreda, if we don't have time, you can always shoot me, because we're still collecting feedback.
Work our way down, see if there's anything we really object to. Bob's made his way down.
You can delete those. I just kept, like, I wanted to, but I just,
Yeah.
Does she want our names on these? I don't care. I don't think so. I don't know, unless you think she might have questions about something, maybe.
well, I was,
Fine if you put it on.
I usually actually help, like, I made stops, I didn't know. You were doing this, you're capable.
Now, the time frame is good, but there also needs to be, like,
It was last
you know, we talked a lot about, you know, how much time we got as kids.
Oh, the other one.
This says adjustable time frame, but somehow.
But you have it.
Said that. Star students were very ambitious, but to the time, because these kids are. It's just destiny. So that's the only thing that I see missing here is something about time. Adjustable time frames, but time.
I think that's by graduation. That's really the adjustable time frame. That you may not finish geometry this year, you gotta go into it next year. So it's bound by the school year or the date.
Right.
It's bound by
And
accomplishment. I don't know that that's really.
About a minute?
So is that what adjustable time is?
Just give these two.
How was heavy
I would be okay with
Yeah,
it.
I think that's really what that means. It's
I
not.
do like multiple pathways, I do like.
Got it, I go, oh, that's what they meant.
2 days.
Yes, we had these discussions with 2 days. 2 hours would be the max.
Yeah, right? Right.
Okay, so if you didn't, because Alfreda, I know you came in a little bit later, so don't worry about it. If you get home and you're looking through it, just shoot me an email. That's not, because I'm just making my collection,
Okay.
so no problem on that. So why don't people just report out, and then I'll collect everything? So Faith?
Okay, so Bonnie and I worked together, and we actually liked the Vision 2020 bold statements, but preferred the new, less wordy bullets. So we start, just because it was the same content, but it was just specific and to the point.
Okay.
And I feel like more isn't always better, and if we just focus on the important things. We also liked empowering lifelong learners to succeed in a world yet imagined over the fast-changing world or the ever-changing world. I think it's more unique. It reminds me of Dr. Seuss.
Well, if you ask Adam what ever-changing world reminds him of, what is it, Adam?
I'm from Live and Let Die by Mark Martin.
Right.
Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Live and let die.
Okay, good, and then I'll take your cards and stuff. Pat and Dan?
Attach it to here.
Well, we agreed about the initial mission statement part that we liked in a world yet imagined. We felt that the initial paragraph after the red line in the 2020 should be in the 2030 instead of what was there.
Okay.
And in the part about the community, we felt they left out partner in ensuring that all students are career and college ready, and we wanted to see that back in there.
Okay.
So that was it.
Agreed too, because
I see that, you put that too.
Yes.
That-
I think that's important for our students to be ready to, whether it's a trade or college, but they need to be prepared in whichever course they
Well,
take.
See what, I think when we revised, we put it in the top there. See in the red, we put college. So
okay.
we had done that was a recommendation too, is to put the bullet back, and then people said, well, what about putting it up top?
No, I didn't even see that.
Right.
We missed that too.
Right, so I want you to see it is there, it's in the red
Make it a little
statement.
That's fine then, the way it's
Yeah, you like it that it's at least stated, that's.
More emphasis.
Just
more
has to be
emphasis.
stated.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we all missed that. That's fine.
yeah. Well, no, you went the same way we went, so, okay, absolutely.
Great minds.
Anything else? Good. Bob, Tom, and Alfreda.
We agreed with the current Vision 2020 mission statement there, yet imagined. We like that better than the alternatives presented at this point in time and didn't come up with anything different. The first highlight in red, we reworked a little bit to read this way. Every Auburn student acquires fundamental knowledge and skills to be successful, starting with home, school, and community into today's world and tomorrow's global economy. So it's a little bit more wordy, but it incorporates,
Some of the stuff they liked in the other one.
Starting.
yeah, where they're starting and where
they're
we're
going.
hoping to get them.
Okay. Then you captured that somewhere?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, right here. We also looked at taking, on the second bullet point there, or the second bullet there, apply, and taking the apply there, just apply knowledge and abilities to real-life situations. And then the fourth bullet, see learning as an ongoing, lifelong process. And whether we kind of stop it there, we're not sure about the continuous gains and celebrating along the way, being as applicable to life after school. So we looked at that. Bob pointed out on the last point and the second bullet that school board probably should be school committee. Other than that, we didn't have enough time to delve into it and have to review it more.
Review it more.
I had a question about celebrating. Was the origin of that, did it come from someplace in particular as far as celebrations? Is that part of?
Well, I think we've been working with that idea that we celebrate our growth, we celebrate accomplishments, we set goals, we celebrate those. So that's
Okay.
where that's coming
So if that's important, then, you know, I will give it some more thought as far as that, because I did see that there might be a need for celebrations and the continuous gains, measuring the gains so that students realize that they are gaining, they're getting better.
Yep.
And then
Positively
they
reinforce.
have, right, so I think I would I'll think about that one and I'll send that to you.
So
You're
don't,
using celebrate sort of like achieve?
exactly, yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
that might be it.
Recognizing.
Recognize their achievements along the
Yeah.
way.
Right,
Yeah. I'll put that in.
probably more accurate than celebrate.
Yeah, recognize. Yeah, we recognize can be in many different ways. Yeah.
Along the way.
Recognize achievements along the way.
All right, so,
Clarify that, recognize personal achievements?
It is
Because
about,
you want to identify the student,
Students.
recognizing
this is all
their
about,
own.
yeah,
It's all about
the
students, but do we need further clarification? Celebrating our achievements along the way.
well, I think you're achieving your own, but you're also achieving, maybe if you're working with a team,
You
or
might
you're
work-
working.
right, because you're
It
working
doesn't have to be
collaboratively, too.
individual, it could
Right.
be, we're celebrating as a school,
Yeah.
a goal, or
Could be.
As a whole.
as a family, as a community, yes.
Different stakeholders, so I think that allows everyone to come in,
Okay.
as recognizing achievements along the way.
Actually, you might want to say, because you've got the lead in, our students see learning as an ongoing, lifelong process with continuous gains recognized along the way.
Okay, capture it. Okay. So with it, you know, next week, if you still have stuff, keep sending it to me, okay? And girls,
What'd you think?
you got the mic. Yeah, I see, I hear them moving, okay, they're moving down. Coming in late, they did come in from a game today.
I know.
You played,
judge
and
my
I'm sure you
appearance.
played tough. I can see your faces are still red from working hard.
Covered in mud.
That's a tough team, so I'm sure you gave it your all.
I liked how in the 2021 it included the career and/or college ready part because I think that's really important.
Yep.
And we liked how for the new one, there's a bullet for appreciate and respect diversity because I feel like it stands out more. Yeah.
Like that being separated out.
And like I just thought that the new vision kind of like the wording is a lot better, like it flows better because it's like I don't know, easier to like read and understand, I think, and less wordy. So I like that.
All right, so I'll gather everything. So send it my way.
I'm gonna,
Thank you for that. You're all set. When we have a draft ready for first reading, we'll have it on the agenda. Notes on it.
She didn't.
Upside down.
Move that way, Scott.
Very private, very private.
Sorry.
It's not mine.
Yeah, he's getting cozy in there.
Getting cozy down there.
Okay, so the next part is to review in workshop, you know, the change in the law and how that's being, needs to be reflected coming into our new graduation policy. So Shelley and Michelle are going to kind of review how we got where we are today and the proposed changes and giving you some state information. And as you noticed in your, or I don't think, well, when we look at the resolutions from the Maine School Board Association, there's also a resolution around still maintaining some level of proficiency within your policy, even if you maintain credit. So they're also going to talk about that as well as the state put out some guidance around choosing your pathway. So I don't know who's kicking it off.
I will.
Michelle.
So you remember in July when we had a meeting right after the legislation went through.
I was
there
on
was a change.
vacation.
She was in Iceland and we were here. And so at that point, you know, it was shared with you that there was a change in the law. I went from LD to PL, and we would be waiting for what that meant from the department. And so we're going to talk tonight about a couple of things. One, around, as Katie said, this is going to require us to look at our graduation policy, the requirements for graduation here. So we want to give you some information tonight. Again, some history about our pathway, give you the requirements from the guidance from the DOE, and most importantly, we want to give you a time, Bonnie, you said it well, to ask questions, clarify for any one of us here, and be able to have that dialogue amongst yourself about this issue. Okay, so that's the way we have it set up. So Shelley's going to kind of talk through the history and the requirements.
Yes.
Before we get to the policy.
So some of you have been with us for a while, and so you've been with us as we've gone through a lot of this journey around the proficiency-based diploma. So if you're one of those people who's been around, and even though, Pat, you're new to the committee, you were with us in your role at the high school. So this isn't new to you either. You'll know that we've been working at moving toward the proficiency-based diploma for quite a while. And you'll remember that years ago, the state, when they realized after having USM commission a study on what it took to do the transformation to the proficiency-based diploma, they realized that it was a very challenging thing for districts to do. And so at that point in time, they offered districts the opportunity to apply for an extension. And there were a variety of extensions you could apply for. And we came to the school committee at that time and asked for permission to apply for the maximum extension. And surprisingly to us, we're told, no, we don't need the maximum extension. And we said, can we come back to you at the next meeting and talk about this more? And so we did. Tom and Bonnie will remember that. And came back with this sort of big presentation about why we wanted to have as much time as possible. And then the board said, okay, you can apply for the maximum extension. That was the first time we kind of said, we need all the time we can get to get this right. And then when more extensions came along, we always have sort of gone with as far a push out as we can. In fact, it didn't rewrite our policy until the freshman class entered that was required by the law to have the first proficiency-based diploma. I want to remind you about some of the reasons that we kept doing the extension. And part of that was because from the beginning, when that law was first passed, we've said there are things that we've had problems with the way the law was written. So one of them has always been that it has always said students will achieve proficiency in all 8 content areas. And we've had conversation about this multiple times. We've never felt like that is a fair expectation for students for a variety of reasons. There was also always language about proficiency in the guiding principles. So as an example, one of the guiding principles is integrative and informed thinker. And so although we value that, teachers value that skill in students, we acknowledge that that's very hard to sort of measure and determine a student as proficient in. So we've had concerns about that. We've talked multiple times about what are the implications for a proficiency-based diploma for special ed students. And we've followed the conversation about that from the beginning. Me as a member of the Maine Curriculum Leaders Association, Katie as part of her Superintendent's Association, that's been conversation from the beginning. What does this mean for special ed students? So we have always been clear about our concerns with the law. And so we've always opted for the maximum extension from the very beginning. And so we, like Michelle said, watched closely what was going on with LD 1666 and then waited to see what the options were going to be as a result of the law that passed. So I'm going to give you a copy of what we got from the DOE about the diploma options as they exist right now. And talk to you about that just a little bit. I think Katie sent this to you a while ago, so you've probably seen it. And I think there may be extra copies, Katie, so you can.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what was LD 1666 is now Public Law 2017, and it presents districts with 2 options for diploma requirements. On the left, you'll see the proficiency-based diploma law, and on the right, you'll see the credit-based diploma law. The credit-based diploma law is the law that was in place prior to the enactment of the proficiency-based diploma law. That is what's always been law for diploma requirements, what we've always operated under. So there's no change there in terms of the minimum state requirement for credits. Nothing in there is different than it was before. If you look at the proficiency-based diploma law, that is the law as it was originally passed. The only difference is that it now includes a 1 more year extension. So what we have in front of us are 2 options: to either revert to a credit-based diploma, or to go with the proficiency-based diploma as it's always been in law. There's been no flexibility added to that. It still requires all 8 content areas. It still requires guiding principles, still has the same questions and concerns that were always present for special ed. So given those 2 options, and because the things that we saw as challenges and problems with the proficiency-based diploma law that we've seen from the beginning haven't gone away, we are proposing that we step back to a credit-based diploma for graduation from Edwardville High School. So with that, I turn it over to Michelle. She'll share with you the very, very drafts.
It's a drafty draft.
Yeah.
So what we've done is just taken the current graduation requirements.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll do this. Yeah.
Okay.
And we've struck the language to that we had to put in before to meet the requirements. That is This is the second. Yep.
There's this one too,
Let me
right?
tell you what you're getting first. So what you're getting is, you're getting what you had in your packet, only there's been some more revision to it, okay? Yep, we had to update. And I'll tell you about that when we walk through. So you have, we thought it might be helpful for you to have both the strikeouts, like the revisions that we made in the strikeouts in the red, the additions that we put in.
Yeah, this is the one that
And,
we haven't gotten this one yet. Yeah.
and a copy without that, because sometimes that can be like distracting to read the policy. So you have a, sure.
Strikeout.
No? Nope, they're both drafts.
They're both drafts.
Revised draft. Right,
Yes.
exactly, perfect, yep.
One
So
shows the
one shows
revision.
the revisions, kind of live. You see all the strikeouts and the additions. And then the other one doesn't. It just takes that out because it can be distracting to read it with all the revisions.
So this one is these, but this doesn't have the crossouts.
The crossouts
Okay.
are removed from one version, just in case it visually distracts you.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm already distracted.
So I'm gonna walk through the distracting one. I mean, the ones with the strikeouts.
Okay.
Any other clarification on that? It is a little confusing if you're not used to it. If you're not used to it. Yep. Well, on the strikeout, I'm going to go through the strikeouts right now, just so that you know. You can look at either one. You're welcome to, but I'm just going to explain. So in that top, in the first introductory paragraph, we need to rework that introductory piece, and when this goes to the policy subcommittee, which we'll go to after we get feedback from you, we'll go to the policy subcommittee, and we will work on an introductory statement there. So we've struck the language that refers to moving to the proficiency-based diploma there. So you can see that moving down through there. Where we spent the bulk of our time striking out comes next. And what you'll see in the next couple of pages are strikeouts that are related to the phase-in, the references to phase-in. So anything that says class of 2018 or class of 2019 and 2020, those are removed, as well as the phased-in proficiency requirements that you'll see. So when you get to that second page, which many of you have turned to, you start to see what's left. Okay? So that core credits, those core credits in the middle of that second page are what the requirements are. So when you look at the non-strikeout, you'll see that standing alone. We took advantage of being able to, I'll say, tidy up some language. We call things, we don't call it a senior portfolio. Is that correct? Yeah, that's a senior exit demonstration. So we took advantage of the opportunity to shift some language in there so it aligns better with what we, students currently are hearing about and using for language. So if we go on to page 3, you see again a bulk of the reference to the proficiency-based law that was previously in place, and all that language got struck. On page 4, the language around special education, that was, as Shelley said, a point of concern for us, exactly. And so what we did at the time of the drafting of this policy, because there wasn't guidance, if you remember at that time, around our special education, our learners who are, receive special education services, we just chose to put in the language as it read verbatim there. So we struck that language from our policy. We weren't sure what to do with it, and so at that time we put that in, and now we're taking it out because it's no longer in place.
Which we did have input from our special ed director, who is here if there are questions regarding.
Absolutely.
He can explain what is going on in IEP meetings if you would like.
Right. And then the last piece was the certificate of completion, because again, we weren't sure about, at that point, we didn't have a lot of guidance from the department around what about those students. who came every day but didn't meet proficiency. So those were concerns that were raised during the legislative review of LD 1666. Those are very typical problems that other people around the state were having, and so that's been struck from the language here. So, questions or clarifications?
So you're saying it's one or the other? There's no combo, like we have to choose one or the other?
It's the minimum requirements in the green column. Those are minimum requirements, so you can exceed that, and I believe probably.
Well, Shelley's going to
Well, we
explain
did
to you
exceed-
how credit is going to be
Right,
earned.
Right, we'll
Okay.
get to that part.
'Cause I was gonna say-
But to answer your question, the blue is, you would have to adopt that.
You'd have to do all of the
Not attainable to do
requirements of
all
that.
8
Correct.
content areas.
That's what we
Okay, so I'm
believed.
anxious to
Yep.
hear what you have to say about addressing the blue.
Yes, okay.
But are there other questions about
Sorry.
this
No,
before
you're
we go
getting
there?
to it. Shelley has
I
it
will.
on her.
That's the right
screen-
question.
on her.
Proposed policy.
I'd like a little more time to review the whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't do it like right here on the spot. I like to do the homework beforehand. I think I've said that before.
Well, that came out in your packet.
This,
This is
yeah,
all that in your packet.
yeah, yeah. I did
So
not
I
have
will,
time.
we
That's
should
okay,
say that
that's
we,
okay.
we did not, when you look at the core areas, the 18 credits.
Right.
There is not, that is what we've had.
Right.
It's sort of a reversion back to the number of credits we've
Credits.
required before. So we didn't state that, explicitly, but we didn't play around with those. The only one that's sort of a new specifically stated thing is you'll see a half credit personal finance. That's because there's a requirement by the state for students to
good.
have a half credit in personal finance. And one of the conversations we've had already is that we need to sort of define the things that will qualify as that half credit in personal finance.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing in there that would look different than what the policy was like before we made the move to the
Okay.
proficiency-based policy. So it's not a change in terms of credit numbers or the makeup of those credits.
While we're talking about that and looking at what we're expecting of students, I wanted to share a little something that is fresh off the press as of a day or two ago. As you know, the mayor was asked to attend a conference in Washington, D.C. And he had like the assistant commissioner of education there. And there was another one. Right now, my head's still buzzing from the other thing, so I'm forgetting who the other one was in particular he had conversations with, and they were talking about how the pattern across the nation is that schools are dropping PBL, and also that the workforce is finding that the coursework is not comprehensive enough nor aggressive enough in preparing the kids for the real world, the workforce, whether they go to college or whether they go straight to work. But they feel like there are a lot of, remember, there were certain courses we used to take that we're not offering anymore. So as we look at this, I would like us to think, are they having enough, the students receiving enough exposure to the things that are really, truly important, as well as these are too. But are there others that we need to be thinking of in terms of, is there missing coursework that used to be there that really worked well that we have taken out, I guess is what I'm trying to say, So
Do you have examples of that?
No, but I just had a minute to talk with
Oh,
him
okay.
before I came over here from the hospital, so,
Sure.
but I would
We
like
have
to.
a higher level of credit requirement, so, than the state requires.
And that's good. I don't have
mean,
any
the credit
problem
has-
with that.
The state, you'll look in the green section, 4 years of English, 2 years of social studies, 2 years of mathematics, 2 years science. We require more than that.
Right.
So, it would, well, maybe the mayor is willing to.
The place where
send
we-
the-
I think
Yeah.
he might be able to address that. I mean, and it would be nice to have him
I mean,
speak on that topic.
Scott could speak to this too, but the place where we've lost courses, and I know Mary Beth is back there too.
Right.
But over the years, in my experience since when I taught at EL, the place where we've lost opportunities for students is more in the electives.
Right.
We haven't really changed the core offerings that we have. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we've brought back lots of options in different formats, like with our early college offerings and things like that. So we'd have to really sort of audit what the offerings are to be able to answer that, but it would be good to find out from the mayor what kind of things he was talking about that may not be in our offerings.
Because
we have added AP offerings, and we've added a lot of early college
and that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think the mention of the state expectations for finance, we've got kids who can't balance checkbooks. We have kids who can't sign their name. You know, they can't write in cursive. Those kinds of things, you know, and I know some of those things don't take a long time to teach. So I think as we look at this, the whole big picture, are there other things that we need to include in there that the workforce is telling us across the nation that is we don't have enough preparation on. So I will mention it to the mayor and see if we can pull something together and kind of have a little discussion on that.
Katie, perhaps we could invite the mayor to come and speak to us with what he learned on it. I prefer to learn that, know what he's heard face to face with us than at the 11th hour on a city council meeting.
No, I think he would appreciate an invitation.
That would be good. Okay.
Great.
I have a
Anybody else?
question.
Yes.
Yeah, I know when they added the personal finance, if I remember correctly, it was part of the math offering, so this is in addition.
No, we have a personal finance course
I know
that we've been
that.
offering, but
Right.
this is just a reference to there being a requirement for a half credit of personal finance. So if a student opted to take that course, it would satisfy that
By a
credit.
math credit?
But that there might be other ways that that
Okay.
credit could, right, like
Okay.
an
All right.
economics course could also, so that's what we haven't, those specifics are what the high school would need to figure out.
In giving credit to the person who developed that class, it's an excellent class.
Is it just, isn't a course, a full year course that all math students take? So we obviously have to have multiple ways that students could get that credit.
An example of I'll use my daughter as an example. When she went to Quinnipiac for physical therapy, she barely needed to crack a book in terms of anatomy because she had Mr. Roberts. And she said that was probably the best teacher she's ever had. He was tough, and there were times it was a love-hate relationship, but she said if it had not been for his high expectations, his writing his own instructional book, because he was not comfortable with the books that are out there for students in high school. So that's an example of an anatomy course, that really made a difference. And the other kids from the other schools said, how do you know all this stuff? She said, I had a real tough teacher who had high expectations, and the coursework was very rigorous. So I guess that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking, we
Well, I think that one of the key words is rigorous.
Rigorous.
Okay, and Michelle and I noted that from the survey, that it needed to be, our course instructions need to be rigorous on it.
Right.
Likewise, my daughter went to a very fine school in upstate New York, and there was a certain course that she flunked. And as we talked to parents, many of those students that were in her class, and Mr. Neer was one of them, and he didn't flunk it, but I don't think. He might have. He might have. But the deal was that it wasn't rigorous enough for them on it. So when they met with kids from all over the country, our kids in various schools were not up to par on it.
Missed the mark, yeah.
They missed the mark, Alfreda, and I think that it's very important that we have a rigorous courses.
Right.
And we expect the expectation of
They can-
everybody.
They can do it.
All our
Right, they can do
I
it, Alfreda. I
expect
agree
it.
with you. I'm agreeing with you, Alfreda.
Thank you. That's very good.
This is good.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think just to go off that point is, whether or not the students, it's important to focus on whether or not the student can get the credit or whether or not they retain the information or are proficient.
Right.
So I think that's my biggest thing with coming back to this, is I would much rather my children go to college and be proficient in at least the basics so that they can
Good point, too.
start a career and know that common knowledge that they're going to use every day. I mean, I don't use geometry. I love math, but, I took geometry, I took trig. I don't use any of that, and I would much rather my children be proficient than get the credit. So I think we have to also, and that's why I asked, is it just one or the other? Because like Alfreda's daughter, I mean, that was a huge, for her to walk into a college course and already know the basic knowledge of the anatomy class, which I'm a nurse. Anatomy is not always easy for everybody, but if you have that basic knowledge and you're proficient in it, you're much better off than the student that got the credit for it. So we have to still focus on the fact that, yes, they have the credit, but are they proficient? And can they use that knowledge and build on it?
Ensure the proficiency.
Because otherwise the credit doesn't matter, in my opinion.
It's like a blend.
Right.
Yeah.
Who cares if you have a credit if you
And
don't
not
know
lose
what you
track
learned?
of- yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. Like knowing your facts.
I think Pat was going to ask a question.
No, I agree with what she says. I was going to ask the question, and I think you had already intimated that we are.
We were going to talk about that, right?
Okay, so I don't
So,
need to.
no,
Shelley,
it's,
I'm just-
it's a segue, see?
It's your dialogue.
Right, so at the last workshop, you heard
glad
from
you got two
teachers.
mics.
Right, I know. At the last workshop, you heard from teachers, and the high school teachers talked to you about the grading guidelines in place right now, and they talked to you about how students are earning credit now, this year. And they're earning credit by attaining a 76 and by demonstrating proficiency on the required targets in the course. So I met with the department heads at our little last week, and I said to them, you know, we've met, we're talking about policy, we talked about this right here, and the two options in front of us, and we said, you know, around this table, we've talked about the flaws in the proficiency-based diploma law. We all know that it is not perfect, and we, this year, are awarding credit, and we're requiring proficiency to earn credit. I want you to think about that and talk to Scott this week, right now, a week from now, about how you feel about that. And so Scott can tell you about their conversation yesterday, Monday. Yeah. No, Monday. And where we stand right now. Yesterday? Okay.
I know the week.
Okay. Is it Monday? Is it Wednesday?
So when we had that conversation last week, moving forward, if we were to look at what would a credit-based situation look like, there seemed to be solid agreement from them that a 76 is the average. That's the bottom of the average of what they would need to get credit. And we talked farther about, well, you've developed your curriculum maps to understand what is your curriculum. You know what those pieces are in there that are essential. Those are the targets. That's how we've mapped it out, and that's been put forth by the state of this is what needs to be achieved. So we went a little farther and said, if you could envision looking at your course, what are those essential components? What are those essential targets? Instead of looking at the whole pieces that had been set forth under the proficiency-based diploma law, let's look at those pieces as your building blocks of what is essential. I said, think about that. I said, you know, we can talk about it right here. We asked some questions like, does that mean we have to get rid of everything? Does that mean that we would have to pare it down? Does that mean we would add? I said, it certainly doesn't seem to me as if we would be adding anything, but it would be clustering and putting in what are those essential, what are those anchors that need to come out of passing a course. So you have a 76. What are those essential things in your curriculum that when the student leaves there, that you say, yes, I feel confident that they have demonstrated those pieces of information, those targets. What are those essential ones? So that in freshman English, if there are 7, are all 7 of those essential, or are there ways that these first 2 lead to the third, and really what's essential is to get 3, 4, 5, and 6 out of those 7. So what does that look like? So I said, think about that, go back, talk to your departments, and come back next week so that we can have a conversation around that. So if we're going to talk about a credit-based diploma, it's just a little, it's more than a 76. It's saying what's rooted in that class that is essential, that you want to be able to say, I give my stamp of approval, that those things have been completed, 76, and they've met those pieces. And so when they came back yesterday, they said, we wanted to go with those essential pieces. Now for some courses, all of the things that were in there are essential. Those teachers feel like those things are essential. The health teacher spoke like, I wouldn't take anything out. Like, I put those things in there, they're aligned to what's going on with the targets, I wouldn't change any of that. Other teachers have already aligned to some national standards, like, why would I want to take those out? That's how I've built my course, that's how I've built my curriculum, that's the work that we've been doing for years. I don't want to let that go. And then others said, well, this gives us some opportunities to cluster and put some things together so that we can really synthesize down and say, these are the essential components that need to come from them. These are the essential targets that I want my students to know that they have. And the piece that we really stressed was that if Alfreda and I both teach the same course, that we have to be having the same essentials in there, so that if we're both teaching U.S. history, that we're both, those are the essential pieces that come out of that. And so they were they said they either got no feedback, which they solicited, everyone nodded their head and said they were fine with that from their departments, or they said, we really like this, what are we waiting for?
So just to make a couple points, when we were living under the proficiency-based diploma law, what the law said was that all students, in order to get their diploma, they had to demonstrate proficiency in every standard articulated in the Maine learning results in every content area. So when we wrote our progressions of learning targets for Auburn, we wrote them so that when a student met those learning targets, they had fully demonstrated all of the standards. So there's a lot of stuff in our targets. We've known that for a long time. I've always said to teachers, there's a lot of stuff here. We talk regularly about creating a viable curriculum, and I've always expressed my concern about whether or not that curriculum is viable. But we were living under an expectation that students fully demonstrated those state standards. So with that requirement gone, it gives us the freedom to say, we still value proficiency. Like, I agree with you 100%, Faith, and I would say to you, Frida, that when businesses say kids are graduating without skills they need, it's partly because we're letting them get their credits with an average. And an average, you know, it sounds like it should be as simple as to say, when you get this average, you're proficient, but anyone who's ever calculated an average with a class full of kids knows that that's not how an average works. So, you know, you have the thing you struggle with and it gets offset, your low performance there gets offset by high performance somewhere else, and kids leave without skills you want them to have. So part of the reason that kids graduate without skills businesses want is because we haven't gone after proficiency. We've gone after an average grade. So that's why teachers who are now saying no, saying to kids, these are the things you have to be able to do for me, and we're going to keep working on it until you can. That's why they're saying we want to retain that. But what we can do now is we can say we, not me by the way, just to be crystal clear, this is you, the biology teachers, sorry I say that because I was one, but you, the biology teachers, deciding in your progression of learning targets that we've spent all these years working on, what is most essential? You decide. It doesn't have to be everything you teach. But what are you saying? I am putting a stake in the ground. You're not going to get your biology credit if you don't know these things. You get to decide that. That's what they will decide, and that's what would be required proficiencies. It would be by course.
But it's embedded.
Course.
It's embedded in your courses.
Earning credit.
In
Yes.
your course, it's those
Yes.
proficiencies are embedded, so that you're talking about American history, and you've got to do the proficiencies, but you're also talking about George Washington or whomever.
There's lots that you're going to learn. There's a lot of targets that you're going to be taught and that you're going to be assessed on. What will be clear in the syllabus is, here's all the things we learned, here are the things that earning credit requires you to be proficient in. So that's what the conversation has been.
And just to reiterate, the two history teachers are going to be teaching the same targets, the same proficiency.
They are teaching the same targets now,
Essentials,
but they
yes.
would be, yes, they would be agreeing on the same essentials. And what this also has led to is a conversation about this same kind of approach all the way down to pre-K, because we have the same problem everywhere. When you articulate the progression, when you say you're going to do proficiency on everything that's in the state standards, I know there was a question raised about whether or not you knew how many targets were in for a certain grade in writing. Well, if I brought you those standards documents, there's a lot of standards in those documents for any grade level. We wrote our progressions with the understanding that that was the expectation for all kids. And now we have the leeway to say, we will identify what's most important. One of the filters, there's a bunch of filters for making that decision. One of them is, what do they need to do? What do they need to be really proficient at in 3rd grade if they're going to be successful in 4th grade, right? So it'll have to be a logical progression. Frida, you asked about what can we do about our test scores, right? Well, obviously, knowing what this assessments are assessing for targets is going to impact what we choose for proficiency targets. So there's all sorts of things that go into those decisions, but those are the decisions that teachers and administrators will make about which part of what we teach is where we'll expect proficiency.
I think it would be very helpful. We've got this year's 7th graders are the first ones who have gone through all of this for their, up until this point. I think it would be interesting if we had a report where we could compare how they've done with their assessments at the end of the year as their 6th graders, their 6th grade assessments, and go way back 6 years prior to that to see what the next, that other 6th grade, the you know, group, how do they compare?
It's a totally different test.
Totally different test.
Completely different test. State is only doing a 3-year comparison because
Wow.
3 years ago, the test, 3 years ago is when they started assessing for ELA and math, they started assessing the Common Core when they adopted it for our state standards. And so the test results are so wildly different that the state won't do a comparison back further than
Apples and oranges.
Right.
Thank you.
I have a question. Bonnie had mentioned earlier about rigor. And I think it's important because so many of your classes are now heterogeneously grouped, the kids. Is there an ability within the class structures now to let kids do the rigor that they can do? Or talk to me about that. You know what I'm saying, I think. I'm not clear.
Integrated, I mean,
Well, so we do still offer honor. Well, we were using the pre-AP designation, but apparently College Board is now marketing a pre-AP designation, so we have to use honors. So we do still.
We were ahead of the curve.
Apparently we were. Right, but there is when you look at our scales for our learning targets, there is a taxonomy which states the rigor that's expected. So for any target where there's a proficiency, anyone that there's a proficiency expectation on, that would be the expectation for all students. Teachers would still differentiate and scaffold for students who needed scaffolding, or stretch for students who had the ability to stretch beyond that. That wouldn't go away. That's sort of the practice we've always had. And we'd still continue with honors, AP, those kind of offerings at the high school.
Okay. But within a class, you have many different talents and many different abilities on it. So she's really smart. And I'm like, I don't really care. Okay? So we're in the same class. So she is moving ahead. And I'm like, I don't care. But the teacher knows that she's ahead. So are we going to be able to group the teacher and the students that are ahead, like team teaching almost? Regroup and regroup. Yeah, that's right. So we're going to group and regroup.
Well, it's happening in some places. Yeah, it depends on the content area. It depends on the course.
That came up when the teachers were meeting with Harriman. I put that in the superintendent's update. That came up quite a bit of they want to work with different content areas, but they also want the ability to regroup and group across their content. That came up with English and math. Math is already doing that. They've asked to be at the same period, be able to have 2 teachers teaching the same content. So English also would like that as well, is, because I might have a strength in math, certain content, but I have different. So also talking a lot about what does it mean with direct instruction, the workshop model. So that's all about, the instruction. So Shelley's group that's been working on, just started the CIA.
Yeah, we're going to
Curriculum Instruction Assessment. Once you identify those essential targets, then we got to really talk about how those assessments are aligning across those courses, and then how is the instruction differentiating. And I know, Scott, you had a conversation about when students aren't showing that proficiency when they need to, the departments are already talking about how are they going to help those students get those proficiencies. Just like when students were failing, how are we getting them up to passing? So, yes. I
Not,
don't know if you want to talk about
but not only in the high school level. I know we're talking,
yeah.
we're talking high school, but I see it very important to be down in the 7th and 8th graders too.
Yeah.
Because we heard loud and clear that there were kids that could go to 4, but there was no 4 to go to.
Right.
Yes, and that work continues.
Right,
Yes,
so
that
it's
doesn't go-
important to take those kids and being able to have Michelle group those and regroup those kids as a teacher
Right.
on it, even at the middle school. And I think we do that somewhat at the
Well,
elementary
that's
school.
at the elementary as well.
Right, we do it.
Definitely.
Right,
That's natural at that.
right, at that age, but we need to continue that both in the middle school and the high school. So when we're talking about just the high school, I'm not talking just about
Right.
the high school. I'm talking
I'm sorry,
about.
I was sort of in
Yeah,
the
I
high
know,
school
I know.
mode.
Yeah,
as we
you're
did
right.
Graduation
You're right, 'cause of
requirements.
graduation.
Right.
But what goes around at the high school needs to come around at the middle school first, too.
So the discussion is pre-K-12.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Discussion is pre-K-12.
Yeah.
Sure.
Gotcha.
And so looking at the rigor of the standard and the targets right for pre-K up through, so that it's developmentally appropriate and it's aligned with ability, and it is differentiated to allow for levels of learners.
Good.
Something that has been mentioned is what's the transcript going to look like?
Right,
I'd
so.
like to talk about the
Yeah,
transcript. and-
right, so if you take a look at this, there is a section on here about transcript requirements. So there would, the credit-based diploma requires the traditional transcript. So the traditional grade, that average grade is what will appear on the transcript with the course name, and I think our transcript right now has a letter grade is what goes on the transcript, and it's semester 1, semester 2. So there will be nothing, that'll be the traditional transcript that we've always had, is what would be. There's no requirement under this diploma law to report out proficiencies.
When I've spoken to colleges, they said that they do like the score, the traditional, but they also like to have the information that of what your kid is proficient in, and they like to know just as much as they can
Yeah,
about the kids.
I had a little conversation about, whether there'd be an option for people who wanted additional information.
Right.
Would there be a way for us to generate something that would say, here's some specific skills
Right.
that, that this graduate has, that could be an option for kids who wanted it, but it would not be part of what
Okay, but it would be-
we
it could
created
be
as the
available perhaps.
transcript. Yeah, we talked about that. There are some students that would benefit from that kind of
Absolutely.
information. Absolutely.
That would be lengthy, too. I mean, when
Yeah,
you're looking at
which is why-
what
yeah.
they've done all along the way, from preschool all the way
Well,
up
we were talking
through-
about high school.
Oh, just high school.
Yeah.
okay.
If somebody were applying to a specialized program, let's say, and we knew that there were certain proficiencies in coursework that they had taken, it would be beneficial for somebody to see what those proficiencies were, then there might be a way for us to be able to share that. It just wouldn't be part of what we did for a transcript unless somebody wanted additional information.
Okay, so they're going with the grade, the 76 or above, and they're also going with the essential target. So is that added to the transcript or not?
Nope.
That's totally separate.
It's one of the things that's required for you to get your credit. It's not reported out on the transcript.
Okay, that's,
So it's just
The traditional
embedded type
transcript.
thing into the course. The essential targets are embedded into those courses.
Right, so when I end the semester and I verify my grades as a teacher, which teachers do now, I used to do it all the time, you'd check the averages and make sure nothing looks awry. The second thing I would do is check to make sure that the students had the proficient scores on the targets that were required. And if not, I would overwrite the average with an incomplete, because the student essentially would be incomplete until they finish those targets.
okay, so what are the students and parents going to be looking at? If I'm a parent and my Olivia has an 85, but she hasn't met a target, so how
You mean
am
at the
I-
end of the semester, it would show an incomplete?
it's going to show an incomplete.
And I think that's the practice that they have in place for this year.
But they'd be able to drill down in Power School.
In Power School, you'd be able to see the scores.
Who would?
The parents and the students, when the
you
scores are
mean-
entered on the targets,
On the targets, okay.
they would be able
All
to
right.
see those scores. So they would see if there's any scores below the 3, you know.
So they're entered on Power School, but they're not coming out in the transcript.
They won't be on the transcript.
So it's
Correct.
early, it's still early in the year, so they may not be seeing targets right now because they don't have the body of evidence to say a student is a 2.5 or higher. So remember, last year, they could see where they were growing and progressing. They won't have that. So they're not going to score them a 1 or a 2. It's when they're 2.5 or higher, the student will get the proficiency mark. So it's not a student saying, can I work for a 4? That's not feeding into the grade. It's totally
Not-
separate from the grade.
Those scores do not impact the traditional grade at all.
Impact
Traditional
your
grade is
GPA.
just the traditional grade.
I know that.
And that's
but
what goes on the
Trying
transcript.
to figure out how I would know as a student or a parent.
Well, I think, and Scott, correct me, that when they put an assignment in, they're supposed to be tagging the
What it's feeding to.
what it's feeding to.
Okay, so I've never been to college. I didn't graduate from high school. I'm a parent. I got a kid at the high school. How am I interpreting this? How can I interpret this? Power School, we don't have a computer at home. Okay, so how do I interpret this? Where do I go and how do I interpret it?
Right, before we didn't,
But
yeah.
Your first layer is to be looking at what that average
Averages.
is saying to you. Like, if
How do I look?
Well, I mean, they did before. Access, yeah.
Have access. And there are parents that don't have access. So how do I have access to this?
That is not a new thing.
First,
All right, so what's the answer?
I don't know, I'm saying.
Auburn Public
before-
Library has computers.
You know, I work two jobs,
They can call,
Katie, come
they
on.
can call the teacher.
There is a way, I mean, they can request a printed
they
printed
can-
you
report.
can always request.
Okay.
Those,
I can request a printed,
absolutely,
okay, and you'll mail it to me.
absolutely.
Okay, or we'll have a conference,
Which they're going to be holding.
right, so that they can come in, if I can get off my job early, my second job early to come in. I think we need to be very cognizant that we all don't have computers. We all don't understand proficiency, and we need to be sure that everybody understands what we're doing.
Agreed.
As a way to access
Right.
where their child is at.
Right,
in the-
right.
in their
Because,
learning.
my kid is brilliant, and I want to be sure that you know it and I see it.
That's right. You're absolutely right, Bonnie.
And I know to speak on for the parents that can't utilize getting out of work early, many teachers are staying after work hours. I know I've been given that option many times that, 5, 6 o'clock, what time works for you. It's not saying you have to be here on a half-day Wednesday at 2 o'clock or you can't meet with me.
And actually, we did discontinue the half-day Wednesdays in the contract that we're in now, so that if my kid is brilliant, then you as the teacher can send me a note by hand and mail it to me. Or if your kid is having trouble and you want to go in and see him, then they come in. Yep.
The association during labor management in September, we are working together that teachers are working to offer conferences at the elementary level in the fall and in the spring. And then in the secondary level, offering one opportunity that is official. That's what they've had in the past. So that we're starting with that. I know there are many teachers that are doing it more often than that, but we set kind of the minimum. And the AA has been doing really well in giving teachers tips on how to best communicate that. But administration is not directing that. The teachers have asked that if we are professionals, then we should have the right to determine when we're doing them, how we're doing them. So we have left that to them. We just said, together we would like a minimum. This was parents last year really asking a lot for conferences, and can we work together to make sure that's happening? And so each school is working on how that's going to run, but it's totally teacher driven. Scott has been working with department heads, but not directing it, just how can I help support you? How can I help facilitate it? Can we look on, so there may be a group of teachers that offer evening, there may be teachers that offer office hours, there may be teachers that send out reports and then say, do you want a conference?
Right.
Do you want a phone call? What best works for you? So we're really trying to honor teachers and professionals and also highly respond to parents' need for that conference opportunity. So I think I really appreciate the AEA recognizing a parent request, as well as honoring that our teachers are working hard and they have schedules and their kids too as well. So we're all working together to try to make that happen. So I know the high school has already been setting their dates, and the middle school's working on all the elementary schools. So parents should be hearing about that from teachers in different ways. It won't be a set this Wednesday we're all doing conferences. It will not be that.
Plus, you can celebrate my child
Right.
by just sending me a note.
Right. Right.
If I have a computer, you send me it by the computer. If I don't, then you have a little note that says Auburn School Department on it, and you send it to me,
But
to
what you're
celebrate
saying
my
is they're
child.
doing a more concerted effort to offer conferences this year.
And if you're a parent and you haven't heard, contact them and say, I'd like an
They should
appointment.
contact them.
Right, just,
Come back to the report. One of our great challenges is that we never know until after the fact that they needed one mailed home, and we're more than happy to provide it. And so then once we get that, then we kind of keep that logged into Power School that this family wants one mailed home, as well as it needs to be mailed to this parent at this address and another parent at another address. So that becomes a challenge. Like, we don't know until it gets brought forth to us.
And I understand that. However, we have things in place. We have 4 principals, 3 guidance counselors, a principal and a dean, and 2 guidance counselors that all are supposed to know their kids better than it used to be. So if Michelle is in trouble, I've worked with her for 2 years, and I know that something's going on with her. So I'm going to reach out somehow. And you know her. You've worked with her, so you should be able to say, oh, I think I'll just send a note.
Well, and that was
And I'm not saying
a
Scott.
lot of the thinking that led us to working on our 9th grade teams.
Yep, yes, exactly.
So we
Right.
can start that process early on.
Right.
Not wait for more time to pass.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering, most of you have asked, we're in the final moments, so Dan or Bob, if you have any comments or thoughts that you want us to consider?
So I know, Elfrida, you mentioned you need some processing time. That's fine. Any of you, as this will go for a first reading, we'll decide when, because we have certain agenda items. So as they work through policy, who are the two? I know Thomas, who's the other member of your policy committee.
Bob.
So Bob and Tom will be looking at this again. So if you have specific questions as you digest or you hear from community members or questions, send them our way so we can help you with those, so that when the first reading you feel like you've been well informed. Please do that. So it's in process right now through the policy committee. Has to go to AEA for them also to review it, and then it will come to you for first reading. So you'll see it when we feel that it's in the right place for you
I
all.
guess I would like to see what changes Elfrida would like, or what changes Tom would like on it before it's finalized. I'd like to have a workshop on it before we get it right up here. I want to be sure.
That's going to delay it because you have workshops planned for the next, I'm just saying, this is something that needs to be, why don't we leave it as it doesn't always have to be in workshop. You can dialogue about it.
We can,
That's
right.
why a first reading isn't, you're accepting it, you are
But I
still
want to see
talking
the
about it.
information that she wants
You're going to see
from her
any
emails,
changes.
or she wants.
No, okay, but listen, any
I know.
feedback we get, you're going to see the change. You know how you're seeing it tonight? We're going to
Give it that
we're
way,
going to
yeah.
strike it out, put some different things, through the policy committee.
But what I'm saying is Elfrida may take and send an email that she wants this, this, and this on it, and I'm thinking, oh, I don't need that, but I need this, and it can work with this. I want to be able to feed off each other's, okay?
Now I know what you're saying. I don't think that should be done through email. What I thought was
Right,
coming to
right.
email is her having a question.
Right.
Like, can you explain why there's multiple
But I
pathways?
want to see your answer to her
Okay.
question.
All right, so whatever comes to us, we
Figure
will
that
put
out.
together and it will go in the
Process.
packet because
Yep.
you are supposed to having a dialogue. As Tom said, workshops, we're not supposed to have meetings behind the scene and
Right,
dialoguing.
right.
So we'll see how much we get.
Most of us see Elfrida's emails anyway, so let's see your answers to her.
Exactly. Okay, perfect.
Right,
All
so we'll take that into
We'll
consideration,
definitely-
figure out
I'll
how to.
make sure that there isn't a lot on that night, so you could have more dialogue. Okay, perfect. You're welcome. Nice job, girls.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll take a 5-minute break and set up for the meeting.
Great. I know, all of a
Hard to tell. Yep,
We're on.
There we go, we're on. We'll begin this meeting of the Auburn School Committee with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And introductions. Why don't we start with our student reps over there? Olivia.
Olivia Ross, student rep. Kiara Fournier, student rep.
Adam Hansen, business manager.
Elfrida Fournier, Mayor's Representative, Ward 4.
Dan Poisson, Ward 5.
Eric Gaudier at large.
Katie Gronin, superintendent.
Tom Kendall, Ward 3.
Bonnie Hayes, Ward 2.
Faith Fontaine at large.
Bob Manili, Ward 1.
Jenna Scribner is not here in his excused absence. Moving on, communications. Has anyone got communications they would like to share?
I would just like to congratulate the young lady from Edward Little who won the KVAC cross-country meet. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. Maybe you could fill
Jillian
it.
Richardson.
Yeah, she did a great job. Congratulations to her.
Very good. From my point of view, the Leverage Learning Institute, which is coming up about 3 weeks, I think it is now, November 7th and 8th, has 59 paid participants at this point in time. We expect we may get a few more between now and then. That number of participants will pay all our expenses, cover all the expense that we have associated with that conference. Any more than that, and we make a small profit, which we have made each year we've had the conference. There are 5 to 7 of our teachers will also be presenting at the conference, providing information from their experience using technology within the classroom and how it's been helpful and what unique ways they've employed that. We will have an Apple Distinguished Educator doing a presentation, not only at the conference, but also providing direct instruction for our teachers K through 6 in a workshop on Wednesday, I believe it's Wednesday afternoon.
On November 7th.
On November 7th, where he'll be there and available to those teachers and lead them through that. So that conference is upcoming. It's been an extremely successful and useful conference for the past years, and we hope that that will continue with our experience.
I printed the flyer and it's sitting in the copy machine. That's why I went like that. You know, when you, but I didn't bring it down. But I'll make sure you get an email that the flyer that went out to all superintendents, it also went out through Maine School Management, sent it out. It's been advertised at several of the Maine conferences as well. And so, you know, we're pleased to have that participation, and we're looking forward to it.
So 59 participants. How many have we had in the years before? Where are we in relation to the year?
We're low right now. We've had, I believe it was 70 plus last year. Our high has been over 100 when pretty much a whole school came.
And actually, we had people from
out of state.
Switzerland and Sweden or someplace.
Yeah. We have a meeting on Friday, so we'll get more of that information.
Get more update then.
Last year, the state right now has a program. Remember Maury Dufour, who was one of our teachers? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's a distinguished educator who works for the state with about, I think it's 6 elementary schools. The state paid for all of those schools to attend the conference last year. Well, those funds are not as accessible as they were the year before. Last year, so we have some of those teachers coming, but so that's a little bit different this year. Is the DOE is not sending the same level of participants, but there will be some. So.
What about schools from out of the country?
I don't know the exact data on it. I think they're from New England.
Okay.
Mostly New England, yeah. We'll have data on that after Friday. We'll see where we stand with
okay.
Registrations on that.
Thank you.
Carl Bucentini facilitates that. We pay him a stipend to coordinate. He organizes presenters, he organizes the day, he does the planning with Hilton Garden Inn, he works with the Apple Distinguished, he does a lot of the behind the scenes to make this work, and he was one of our technology integrators, so when he retired, it was a great fit for us.
And for him.
And for him, and so we appreciate his work on it.
Great. Good. Any other communications? Moving on to the consent agenda, which is the approval of tonight's agenda and approval of our minutes from our October 3rd meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second. Any discussions, concerns on the minutes or anything? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. We have an opportunity for public participation. If someone would like to bring up an item that is not on our agenda this evening to our attention, please come to the mic, name and address.
Good evening, Laura Garcia, 20 Skillings Corner Road. Tonight was refreshing, the workshop. There was a lot of good information. And while it was refreshing, it was a little bit upsetting to me, in part because for the first time I heard acknowledgement from the Auburn School Department about the difficulties that were inherent in the state diploma mandate. I heard about the problems with special education. I heard about the number of targets and how that was hard for teachers. Shelley admitted that these were things that they'd had on radar that for some time were concerns. So it was a little upsetting for me tonight to hear that acknowledgement and to remember that back in March, we asked, the parents had come and just said, can we just have some dialogue around this? Because those were the very issues that the parents were hearing concerns about. So I'm just a little bit disappointed. I think that, you know, I'm looking back at the last several months and I'm thinking it could have been a much more collaborative approach, including parents. It didn't have to be as antagonistic as it's been, because what parents wanted was just to hear somebody from the school department say, yeah, we understand there are problems here and they're going to have to be worked on. We could have even as a district led some of the activities in Augusta around this so that we wouldn't lose the work that was valuable in some of the districts that was being done. So I just, you know, there's part of me that feels like, Chairman Kendall, that you kind of owe an apology to a lot of the parents and teachers out there for just summarily dismissing us in March as being a group of parents that just were trying to be a pain in the backside for the Auburn School Department. So that's unfortunate, but I think going forward we can all learn from it. I do want to talk a little bit about the workshop because where I did research and gain a lot of knowledge around the proficiency-based diploma and how it compares with the traditional system, and then what's being proposed. I'm glad we're going with a credit-based system, and I will tell you that on the page for Auburn Parents United, I put up a poll to find out what people's thoughts were on it. And as of today, 45 parents were saying they wanted a credit-based transcript. One person said they didn't care either way, and nobody voted in favor of the proficiency-based diploma. That being said, I understand the rationale behind having the dual grading with the proficiency. I'll get to that in a minute. What I don't understand is we talked about the difficulties with the special education community with the proficiency-based diploma, and then I heard about using the averaging of grades for the GPA, and then also doing the dual grading on some of the essential targets, and that students would have to meet those targets in order to get credit. But what I didn't hear was, how are we going to do that for our special education community? The problem remains. Because if you have a special education student who can't meet one of those targets, they're not going to get credit for that class. Under the traditional system, what we would do would be accommodate the students' disabilities, thereby adapting what what they're required to do to get credit. And then when they could get credit, so they could still get a diploma. So I think we need to look closer at that and give that some consideration, because I think it will impact the special education community. Additionally, I think it will impact some students who, while they may be very gifted and talented in a certain area, and it's interesting, I talked to a teacher recently who said at her former school she used to be the coordinator for both special education and the gifted and talented, and she had students that received services from both. So one of the things I would like us to consider is that we may have a student that's very gifted and talented in the social studies and humanities and the language arts, but by gosh, they may have a block on something in math. And under the old system, they might do well enough in their math courses with an average to get credit to afford them to graduate. But under what we're describing with the dual system, I think we need to be aware of the fact that the continuing to grade with the proficiency may lead to some unexpected problems on that front. So that being said, I know there's been a lot of talk, and I've read some of the books and this and that about how averaging isn't as good as proficiency grading, because averaging doesn't necessarily... Am I boring you, Ms. Hayes?
I beg your pardon?
I said, am I boring you?
No, I'm listening intently to you, Mrs. Garcia.
Okay, thank you. So... So one of the things that I would like to just point out about that is that I don't think our students have been graduating without the necessary skills to be successful, because we've been grading on an average basis. I think it has a lot to do with grade inflation, social promotion, and those things will still continue when, even under a proficiency-based system, parents think their kid should get credit or graduate and pressure is brought to bear. And as you all may recall, there was that survey that was done of students who said that they didn't feel like they were prepared for what came after high school, but the reasons they gave were things like nobody told them what their options were, and they would have taken more challenging courses. They were not given any study skills in order to be successful in college. So there were other factors rather than just the grading system that we use. And I don't have it with me here, but Westerberg's book actually talks about how averaging is an appropriate use if we are measuring a student's knowledge or skill set within a subject area where it's not necessarily a linear progression, meaning that they don't have to be, you know, math is more of a linear progression, which is different than civics or the humanities. So again, I think this is something that still needs to be talked about, and there needs to be discussion with parents, teachers, and students, because as Ms. Hayes pointed out, you are going to have parents that don't understand the different types of grading. So also, Ms. Hayes, you mentioned about the transcripts, and there was a workshop prior where Shelley went on at length about some dialogue she had with Bates surrounding the transcripts, and I recall that what Bates told them was they wanted to have a GPA, they wanted to know what year the courses were taken and completed so that they could see a progression on the learner's part. So I think that our curriculum department has researched that, and they've done a great job with it. I also wanted to bring up a couple of things that are separate and apart from some of the discussion you guys are having tonight. One of them is there is a law on the books regarding dyslexia, and it requires, as of the 2017-2018 year, that we do screening for K through 2. Do we do that in our district?
The only way that would happen...
Ryan behind me is saying yes.
We do?
Yes.
Okay, so within each school, we do? Yes. Okay. Then, Mr. Fairchild, I'm gonna want some more information on that. So just for somebody who's reached out to me about it.
So, you can
Yep.
email, you could call Mr. Fairchild.
Yep. And the other thing is that I happened to see the minutes from the Auburn Education Association. And one of the things that the teachers have raised as a concern is that the lack of substitute teachers is resulting in ed techs being pulled from students in our special education programs to cover. And again, if we're talking about social justice in education and equity and making sure that we are helping those students at risk, I think that this is a very critical issue that we need to be addressing as a district, especially if we want to ensure the success of those students. Which I will end by just saying that I think a lot of the work we've done, not me, but our curriculum department and teachers has been great work. But I also think there are some other fronts that we need to still be moving forward on in order to make sure that we are graduating students who can be successful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan could come, oh, sorry.
And Ms. Hayes, my vote would be for you not to support the resolution with regard to the implementation of proficiency-based learning when you go to the school board association meeting.
We'll see what the board says. Thank you.
You want Ryan to speak? He was supposed to speak. He could have spoken at workshop if you wanted to.
Yes. Would you like to add some comments?
Ryan, would you want to explain how you're handling the changes at IEP meetings?
Thank you.
Ryan Fairchild, Special Ed Director for the Auburn School Department. So a couple things. One is obviously this is a draft, so I can talk a little bit about what the guidance I've been giving special education teachers around what we're currently operating under. So students with special needs, within the current law, there are section 2 and 3, and it talks about, section 2 talks about accommodations, right? You have to accommodate for multiple ways. You must, use the word must. Multiple pathways, opportunities for kids to learn. And then it talks in section 3 about how students with special needs, IEP teams, can determine what are the essential, basically the essential learning targets or themes or strands within a target that are important for a student. And as long as you maintain the integrity of the standard. So that's really what we've been doing. In talking with our special education teachers and team leaders at the high school, many of our students are included in regular classrooms with support. Many of our students also will take course topics, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, some math courses in a special ed setting. And by and large, our students are meeting those targets, all of the targets. So though we're able to kind of narrow them down within the standard, they're still meeting all of the component elements of it. I think the difficulty has lied in with some of our students. There might be some other disability-related things within the school environment or behaviors that sometimes make it difficult for them to access all the time. So I think those are some of the things that we maybe more struggle with than really teaching to the targets or incorporating or having students meet proficiency levels. That I spend most of my time really talking with team leaders or people around that element is how do we really include kids with other factors that kind of impede the learning? Because once we boil it down to, once we take care of those issues, they can learn and they can meet these standards. So I just want to talk a little bit about the new proposal on this law. I'm sorry, on this policy. So, you know, we have many targets within a course. This allows you to kind of narrow those essential learning elements down. So a child has to receive a 76 or better to earn for all the course, but then you might now have the flexibility of, as a department, saying, okay, within physical science, we're going to take these 7 elements, and we're gonna narrow it down to maybe just 2 essential learning elements. And those are very broad. And students, in my experience, has been students with special needs really can get the conceptual stuff. It's sometimes when you get down to the low taxonomy, when you get down to the memorization, or those are the elements that are really difficult. But when you think big picture, when they have an opportunity to apply that learning, so I don't necessarily think that that's, it's something that we have to plan for, we need to be thoughtful about. But I do think that it's not going to greatly change the work that we do. Some of the conversations that I'm really involved with is, how can we work with behavior, or how can we work with different, students with anxiety and get them included with their non-disabled peers as much as possible. And that's much more of other factors than it really is about what's happening in the classroom.
And they still have individualized educational
Absolutely.
plans, so when you're looking at those targets, you're saying
Yes.
each child and how they're going to access those targets. Because you were explaining that, you were in a recent meeting where you really talked as a team through the parent and the teacher.
Yes.
Where do we think this child can access these targets, and how we're going to support the child
Absolutely.
in their attainment?
Yeah, so within the IEP, there's different sections of the IEP, and in Section 7, it talks about the accommodations. So what accommodations does a teacher need to implement? And an accommodation is something that a teacher does. It's at the grade level, but it's something that the teacher does to make the environment or the learning expectation much more clear, much more manageable for the student. So that could be anything from the use of technology, it might be speech to text, it might be broken things down into smaller chunks, it might be preview and review. For some of our students, take their tests with a speech and language pathologist, so it helps them understand the vocabulary. So might have access to speech and language pathology. There's a lot. There are hundreds, probably thousands of different types of accommodations that you can put in. And so we're not just limited to a couple. It's the IP sit around the table and says, okay, here's the student, here's Ryan Fairchild, here's what we know about Ryan Fairchild's learning. What accommodations does Ryan Fairchild need? So it's not a drop-down box.
To meet the
Yes, to meet the proficiencies, yes, absolutely. It can meet proficiencies. It also can be anything in particular that Ryan needs to improve on. And then in terms of the multiple pathways, in the law and now in this policy, it talks about having students being able to accommodate and also have multiple pathways to be able to achieve that learning. So you could do that project-based, you could do something, an internship, and I think that remains the same. And having that expanded for kids, I think, for all kids is going to be a
isn't that
great
appropriate
opportunity.
for all children?
It's appropriate for all kids.
That's what we're doing for all.
We're doing it for all kids. I mean, this isn't really about special education. I mean, this is about for all kids. It's about how do you make learning meaningful. My experience has been that when you give students time, when you give them ways to communicate that might be different than ways of doing it other students, when you give them an opportunity to explain, they can meet any expectation that you have. You just have to do it differently. And so that's what we're focusing our teams on. Right now, one of the things some of the training that I've done is we went through the updated law with my team leaders, and then we've really been focusing on present levels of performance, which when you look at an IEP, we have these different sections that break down. So Section 4 talks about the evaluation information. So I really want them to explain what that means. And then you break down to the strengths of the student and the needs of the student. The needs of the student, you must have an IEP goal. So the goal must be measurable, and then you have a present levels of performance and say, okay, how does this child perform in the regular ed classroom, and what are the data points? So I'm really pressing my team to say, okay, we've defined what baseline data is. Use your baseline data, use your STAR data, or use other type of assessments so that you really get a really clear understanding of present levels of performance, and that's going to help you when you sit down on your IEP team around the table and you talk about, okay, how Johnny's doing in English class, then you know, right, what the specific need is, and then you can cite the standard, and then you have your accommodations in Section 7 of the IEP. And as of right now, I've committed myself to going through all 700 IEPs, reviewing them myself. So my wife loves me right now. She loves the fact that she doesn't have to hear me talk, because this is what I'm doing at night. So, but I'm looking forward to the challenge of it, and it's good work, it's hard work, but we're getting there.
Ryan, would you
Yes.
just clarify, so you talked about the accommodations around to help students demonstrate proficiency. If a student was having difficulty in terms of the rest of how he's going to earn that, he or she's going to earn that credit, which would be around the average side of the table, okay, the credit base where students have to hand in homework, they've got to complete assignments, they've got to demonstrate on this task or that task. Accommodations can be put into the IEP for that side as well. It's anything that helps a student be successful in their educational program.
Yes. An accommodation is anything that helps a student be successful in their education, in their educational experience. So it doesn't have to be specific to the course. It can be anything regarding the school day to help them, you know, maintain. You might have accommodations for academics. You might have accommodations for gym class. You might have accommodations for hallway walking. I mean, it's just, but yes, there are, you can put accommodations in around, you know, how you're going to help students in terms of the coursework and the grade averaging and giving extra time to complete homework assignments. You know, you might give them additional time to complete and then to review and preview. Access to notes during tests or quizzes. I mean, these are all accommodations that are available for students. And they have been for a very long time.
Eons. Story of my life. They've been there for eons, yes. But that's great. You know, I mean, I think what that does is it opens it up to our other population who I've talked about before, who are leaving our school system to achieve, you know, to achieve success in education, and knowing that this is still alive and well today after all these years, when these kiddos a long time ago never even had a cumulative folder. There were no assessments on them, so we didn't know what their levels were. But if you teach to their strengths and not their weaknesses, they will learn. And I love that you say and you believe that they can learn, because I've always said that. I've always said if you teach them, they will learn. It's just how you teach them, and teach them in their best ways, you know, and that they'll feel successful. And they like to be, and when, you know, Bonnie Hayes had said something about grouping and regrouping the children and making sure that, you know, they have an opportunity, you know, to work at their levels. What's important is that if they're in the mainstream where appropriate, they're in the mainstream, they're going to be able to pull, they want to be, they know the highest achiever in that class, and they want to be there. So they will do anything they can to be in that class. Behavior usually is something that you might want, you know, that we work with. I used to use it as a reward. If their behavior was fine, then that meant that that child could stay within that classroom and learn from his peers and still have the IEP guide what his instruction was, his or hers. But if the behavior was so outlandish and interrupted, so he would have to earn his way back in and out, making deals with them, that kind of thing. But I would like to see us looking at some of our students who have their education in other locations, and start looking at, you know, how we can get them back. You know, and I'm going to keep pounding for that. You know,
I look forward to December 5th.
Good.
That's when I'm coming back to you about that.
Which is, I was telling Tom, there's some questions that you'll be doing a workshop on December 5th.
Right.
That we can dive deeper into some of these topics.
Yeah, looking forward
As long
to
as
it.
I can stand up and not have to sit down the entire time. You freaked me out last year. I'd never done that before. Just okay.
Do you
as long
need
as I can
that as
stand
an
up.
accommodation,
I do need
Ryan?
that as an accommodation. If you have a
We'll
wireless
accommodate
microphone,
you.
that would be helpful.
Just so, Elfrida, just going back with what was said last meeting was that, yes, we need to bring kids back, but we need to see what the cost is when we bring them back on it. The total cost?
It'll be a saving.
It's going to be interesting to see.
I'm sure.
And I
it'll be a
want to
saving.
see it
Yeah.
before I commit to
we
it, because
haven't
I'm all
even
for bringing kids
Yeah,
back,
we
but I
haven't
want to
even
see the
tried
cost.
it.
We want to make sure it works.
I mean, we could
There
talk
isn't
about
always,
it.
what we all learned with everything, which I think we've all pointed out, there's not going to be one perfect thing for every single person. We have to be flexible and looking through different lenses in how we approach. And special ed's going to be the same.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I'll talk about in December is when we talk about bringing kids back, you know, there are 19 different doorways to get into special education. So within that, you have lots of multiple different types of disabilities. So to think that we would just, you know, open a school or a building and bring back all the students, you have to really think about the disability, what is the type of instruction you need to provide, and you have to give the time and the resources. And so when I'm really trying to think about this very systematically is, if we're going to bring students back, we have to also build the infrastructure and build the resources to not just bring them back, but do it well and educate them well.
They're successful.
And to be absolutely successful in our schools. And I'm committed to that, but I want to be thoughtful and mindful and very systematic about that approach.
Thank you, Ryan.
Any other questions? All right.
Get you on
He'll be back on the 5th.
December, that's right.
Cool.
Get you then. Any other one with comments they'd like to speak? Committee? All right, we'll close public participation, move on. Student information. Do we have, besides the game?
Did you win?
No, we didn't. We lost 6-0. Oh. It was a #1 team, so it was kind of expected. But we played hard. Yeah, we did.
Good.
Just a tidbit, my daughter broke her nose in the Skowhegan hockey game when she was a senior at Edward Little. So I have watched that, and
Not
yes.
surprised. Emma Allen, she got hit in the foot with one of the balls, and she was done for the day.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning. Yeah. They do have some strong hits.
Bring that mic a little closer and let us know what's going on.
So this Friday is the football's last home game at Walton, and NHS is hosting a bake sale. So we're going to be doing a bake sale, and all proceeds are going to the Breast Cancer Foundation. And during the school day, we have been advertising or putting up posters for a pink out, so that students can go either all out or just wear something that's like pink, just in honor of that as well. And our goal was to get businesses to donate $1 per person on that day, but it was kind of short notice since we kind of came up with it last week, and we haven't really found one yet, but we're still looking. Yeah, but in the future, that's what I mean. Next time, if we have something like that, and then also a couple of weeks ago, we had the field hockey breast cancer game, and we were able to raise, I think, over $1,000. So that was pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
so we're
good.
hoping the football game will be just as successful.
Yeah. And
So bring cash to the game.
That's right.
I always have to remember, go to the ATM machine.
but I think that's all we got.
All right.
Do you guys have sisters or brothers that are in the elementary schools?
I don't. I have a brother that goes to Walton. I have 2 sisters in the middle school. One's in 7th and the other's in 8th grade. And then I have a stepsister that's a freshman.
Ask them what they're doing in their schools?
Yeah.
So that we can kind of get an idea of
I'm not gonna lie. Some of them are a little oblivious, so I might not get much information back, and it might not be accurate either. So I can definitely do that for you, but just wanna, I just wanna warn you.
We could email the principals.
Yeah.
We can always do that.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, Superintendent, Planning and Development.
Okay, so in front of you are the proposed resolutions from the Maine School Board Association. So these are vetted through your association, and so I'll just talk through them, and if there are any questions. As you know, Bonnie is the delegate for this, for your conference. Tom and Bonnie are attending the conference, and then Bonnie will be the delegate. So,
Katie, just to be clarified, this conference was open to any one of us to go to on it. And
anyone can go.
Unfortunately or fortunately, Tom and I are retired, and we can have the opportunity to do this. So that's why we're going.
So the first one, and this was a hot topic last year, although my years start to meld together, but around CDS, so that's Child Development Services, and as you recall, there was a lot of discussion around public schools taking child development services. To make you aware, I have been nominated to serve on the state committee on the task force to review public schools taking that on. I'm representing this region, probably the Androscoggin region, as the superintendent on the committee. What is obviously number one is, will funding follow? So we're all for what's best for kids, and we're all for, we absolutely know we need that strong connection as students start to enter our pre-K. We're already finding that, the more we're involved when they're younger, the better we can support them as they come in. The one concern is, will the money follow them? So this, as you can see, they're proposing that we continue to investigate that, and that's important around best serving our pre-K students and even before that. So is there anything, feedback around that for Bonnie, around that resolution that you're thinking of?
I have a question. I know when we began that, all of the monies that I had in my budget under CDS, that paid for the instructors, the teachers, it paid for equipment. The thing that we didn't have to pay for was that if you had a room available somewhere that, graciously offered that, so that was the piece that we didn't have to pay for. So is that still in effect right now? So are those teachers?
Well, what will be the challenge? Obviously, certification, which you'll notice later in another one. But right now we have 2 pre-K teachers that are certified in order to bill. And so CDS places students in those classrooms. One is at Sherwood Heights and one is at Fairview School. I think what the challenge has been is CDS. We all have service trying to find our providers. So I think CDS has struggled with their funding. So that's what kind of the concern was, is we were picking it up because they were struggling with funding. Well, that's just going to fall on the taxpayers. And so depending on service centers like Lewiston, Auburn, we will have a larger impact on our budgets if we don't have state funds that support this.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So that, I think, will be a big discussion around the finances of this. But yes, we work hand in hand with CDS. Laura Shaw, who's the out-of-district coordinator that works closely with Ryan, she does all that coordinating of who are our students, who's coming to us. If we have students show up in pre-K that we're like, uh-oh, we're noticing they're already popcorn kids, has CDS done any evaluation on them? Were they ever, so we do keep tight with them. So it makes sense that we should probably run the CDS part of it. It's just the funding is going to be the challenge.
It's complicated, too.
It's very complicated.
It's a lot of work.
We talked about if this comes, we would have to hire a coordinator.
Oh, there's so
we
much.
would have to have a pre-K, a 3 through 5 coordinator, and Chrissy Lenahan, who oversees our pre-K programs right now, she is very interested in that direction because that is her forte. That's her her expertise. So Ryan has already talked to her. If this is a possibility, we need to start thinking ahead, being proactive. So yes.
So is the idea that all of the directors, that they have already consolidated a lot of the counties?
No, it's running similar, isn't it? Ryan?
So
they have they have similar to you. They have a CDS director. They
still have that.
Yeah, they still have that. Yes. Yep.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, the money needs to follow because taxpayers can't take that on.
So you want to know, are people supporting that one? Bob, do you?
It's the last sentence that is important. Our support is contingent on the state funding required to provide these services in school or in an appropriate outside placement, because we cannot continue to have the kind of shortfalls. So, and ask taxpayers to pick up.
Right, exactly.
So that's important that we have that.
We reinforce that, right. So Bob, what are you feeling about this one? Thumbs up?
I think it's thumbs up, but I agree that we need the state funding to do it.
Faith? Where are you?
And I also think it might be a little bit premature to answer the mayor's call for a 0 budget increase.
That's probably coming up when Elfrida does her report out.
Right, okay.
Okay. Faith?
I agree. I think it would be a lot to ask the local taxpayers to take on.
I don't think there's any question that it's the right direction, but funding, as with any state funding, usually falls short of the need. And the local taxpayer needs to recognize that they're going to pick up that difference in order to provide a quality service. I think It serves the students extremely well, and I think integrating into the system would serve those students even better than it does now. But the taxpayer is going to have to recognize and accept that an existing budget is going to increase in order to span and bridge the difference between what the state is going to provide for funding and what the program needs are actually going to be.
Huh?
What is the current source of funding now for CDS?
State.
State.
Totally state?
They do state, and then
federal?
they can bill, I'm going to guess, similar to what we do
They
for
bill
Maine Care.
Medicare, Medicaid.
Yeah, they can do the Maine Care billing, but it's state funded.
That's a job in and of itself right there.
Yeah, state and federal funds, yeah.
I guess ditto. I mean, don't ask me to come up with more money on my retired salary for property taxes, but I think it's a wonderful program, and I think it's essential that we do this, but we need to have that state funding.
Dan? Similar?
I would say the same thing. Yeah, funding would have to follow, or else your taxes would probably.
Alfreda?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't support this, because I brought it to Lewiston and Auburn. But I do believe in this program. I think it makes so much sense. You're starting with, preschoolers, it's early intervention and doing the right thing. But I am very concerned about the funding, because we have taken on so much in education that the state used to fund, that bit by bit the funding doesn't come along with it. They say they're going to help. I say they, but then when it ends up that they're not helping, then the taxpayers have to pick up the burden. So I'm very concerned about that piece right there. The other part of it as well is that all of our practitioners out there, OT, PT, all of that, I mean, that's another whole
right.
facet of it that takes time, that you need to make sure you get your money, your Medicare and Medicaid money. So it's very complicated, so it requires personnel to be able to do that. So I'm concerned about who's going to do that part of it, so. But I appreciate and support the concept, but the money has to come with it.
The bottom line is that we support the concept, however, we want to be sure that it is state-funded before we pick up anything for our taxpayers.
And we don't want it just lip service either. Right. Done with a lot of
I think
stuff.
this will probably be, that will be the high discussion at your delegation.
Yeah.
I would say that.
I just have a quick question. Maybe right now is not the appropriate time, but with CDS,
Yes?
it's if the child has insurance, if the parents give permission, they can try billing their private insurance, correct?
That is
but
correct.
But
You
the
can't
parents
require
don't have to, you can't require it.
Right.
No,
Okay.
can't require
If
it.
they have a IEP that requires services
Right.
and they don't want to provide their insurance, they don't have to.
Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It comes up at IEP meetings, yes, right? Which is a challenge for families that have high copays.
Right, so it's just
Wanna
hard
explain that,
because we don't
Ryan?
get the funding from
I wanted to talk about some of the one piece about the funding. In the current reimbursement, there's not reimbursement mechanism for case management, which is the child find activities, which is to going, doing the paperwork, running the IEP meetings, writing the IEPs. There's no reimbursement money for that. And there's no reimbursement money for coordination either. So like a coordinator. So I think as you talk to your local representatives and you think about this moving forward, I would encourage you to ask about that and to see if that could be incorporated in a funding mechanism. Because that, with OT and PT, I could talk to my providers. We could probably do that. Some portion of it, maybe a school that has a 282s, maybe Sherwood or Washburn, but maybe not all of them. But also, the reimbursement rates right now for OT and PT are much lower than private providers. I think what you're getting into is that for some families, they'll come in providers that provide services for CDS, they're reimbursed at a lower rate. It takes longer for them to reimburse. But, oftentimes they'll say to families, listen, if you access us through your private insurance, then we can get you in because we only have so many slots for CDS.
Right.
And so oftentimes, and that's great, but the problem part of that becomes the parents oftentimes will drop out of the referral process. So when they come to kindergarten, we don't know who they are. And we've never seen them before. So like right now, we have, I met with Chrissy Lenahan last week, and we went through the numbers, And so I know how many special ed kids are currently, how many spots are being taken. And I know that in the last 5 years, other than last year, we had 28 students come in with IEPs last year. In previous years, we had 56, 54, and 56. So right now, with the number of spots, you know, we're not even hitting 20. So because of the shortage of service providers and CDS, I think there are a lot of kids that are currently not getting served, or families are accessing services through private insurance, and so when they come to kindergarten, we don't know who they are.
Right.
And so they have to go through this referral process. So that would be one thing I think that would help us, is if, you know, if the reimbursement rates were higher, if they get reimbursed for all components of special education, case management and coordination, you know, then we could run the numbers and we could see what we could do and try to meet all of the needs within Auburn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next one, I think, is probably one, not a lot of discussion, school safety. So this is a big one around asking the Department of Facilities Office, you know, taking a stronger role in advising, providing funding for schools to access that may need support. So you can see the rationale here is the frequency and veracity of school shootings in this calendar year alone have put school safety top of mind for school boards and the public. Standard practices have changed based on experiences during these tragedies, and we're gaining awareness of early warning signs in the cases where students are perpetrators. School boards need to support an informed and comprehensive approach to make schools as safe as possible, including mental health interventions. So the state has been doing more to advise and giving out information, which has been helpful. I think this is more to be equitable about what schools are doing. We've been very on the forefront of school safety because we have a school safety consultant that works with us. And so, you know, he is always saying, you know, you should be very impressed with what you're doing and how you're practicing, because, you know, these are times where people are very worrisome about, are we prepared in case? And hopefully that in case will never happen. So this is just a support to support school safety.
No money attached to this.
No.
No. Well, they are looking at increasing funding in the revolving school renovation fund. So that used to be for projects, but you could do that for safety upgrades. So being able to use those revolving funds for school safety as well. So it's just kind of saying you're in support of looking for funding, looking for a comprehensive support for schools around school safety.
Any concerns?
No, just one question. Would they, I'm reading into this that I'm sure that there will be programming that evolves around this, because they would have grants that they would be writing, and then we would have, our schools would have access to that. So there may be something newer and better that we haven't tried that we need to do. So that's what
I think what they're trying to say is we're all kind of doing our own thing right now. We're,
right.
you know, we're talking like at our superintendent's group, we went around and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I think it's more a coordinated effort that we're all doing best practices.
Yes, definitely.
So for example, in our regional service center work, the other school partners are going to be starting to work with Scott Parker, our consultant. So this region will have a consistent message on what we're doing, and Scott is very connected to best practices.
We all in favor?
Is there support?
Full support for that?
Yes, yes.
All right.
All right.
The next one, this was a hot topic on legislative, which was the gun-free schools. And this was all about people being able to have their guns in their cars. This is, I think, mostly where the northern area, where they are going to pick up their students. Superintendents did not support that. They're being asked not to support. They shouldn't have their guns on school property, period. There was a lot of testimony on this. Principals explaining being threatened in the office and knowing they could go out. And, you know, we have to have that time to be able to call 911 and not have somebody have access to weapons. So we're hoping you'll support that. Any question on this one?
Current policy is that they're not allowed.
Correct. They're not allowed, and they wanted to have some bending on that to allow somebody not to have to go home and lock up their weapon before going to school.
Any comment? Would
I shouldn't say
support the
weapon, it
current
could be a
law, not-
hunting gun.
Yeah.
It's not just for hunters.
Be okay?
Everybody
okay
else
with
set with
this?
this one? Okay. The next one is the proficiency-based diploma one, which we heard at public participation. So this and the Superintendent's Association is also supporting to continue to work on what does proficiency mean. So this is similar to that in recognizing the importance of proficiency, how that looks. Obviously, there's work to be done. Reading this, they believe, the association believes it's a step backward for students who should be given the time and support needed to master one level of coursework before moving on to another. So this is that whole idea that we all learn at different time and different places. And if we hold penalty for not learning at the pace you're supposed to. So this is continuing to look at ways to support students demonstrating learning different times. This is also to continue to talk about it, do a workable, more easily understood definition of proficiency-based diploma, address areas of concern, including the grading system, format of transcript. So everything that forced the changes of the option, they, I think, want to hold that proficiency-based diploma had merit, but there's work to be done. But you would hear, I'm sure, Bonnie, more at the delegation around that. I know the superintendent's group is supporting that there's continued work at looking at proficiency.
Bob?
Well, I think the state law should speak for itself. I certainly would not go any, I would not advocate any affirmation of PBL. I think the state law speaks for itself, and I think I agree with studying it more, but I would not give it a blank check to move forward.
Faith?
Yep.
Where are you with?
I would like, I mean, we talked today at the workshops, and I still want to see a proficiency component within our practice.
So that option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
My feeling is the goal of proficiency-based education is a desirable goal, to be able to certify that our students are proficient in the areas, core areas that are needed for success in the outside world. There's no question, and we've recognized that ever since we started this discussion, that there are challenges going forward. But I think this addresses the fact that, and acknowledges the fact that there are challenges, but they can be worked out as with all good efforts taking place, so I would support it.
Matt?
I think what we did, what I heard tonight was incredibly impressive.
Right.
And I feel that ongoing investigation of this topic on the state level is probably should be done, but I like the piece about local communities having control over the pieces and the parts of it that they feel are best for their kids. And I really feel that that's what Auburn has done and has been doing. And that piece I would like to see included in the resolution, actually.
So that's one thing Bonnie could bring forward, you know, the local control is important.
Right.
Dan?
Yeah, same thing, controlling it, I guess, it's kind of new for everybody, so it's hard to grasp, so.
Frida?
I do not support a proficiency-based diploma. I really do not. I think that we have a long way to go. We have to really take a look at what's happening across the nation. We have to take a look at, you know, the impact of a proficiency-based diploma when we don't even know if the colleges are going to be accepting that. And we hear all kinds of things in terms of, oh yes, they're accepting them, and there are a lot of them that are not. And so I think that it's way ahead. I think we need to concentrate on what we're doing right now.
So what have I got here? Have I got a yay?
I think the majority of the board was saying to move forward.
With some
Yeah, again, just
local control.
local control and further investigation,
Further
knowing that
investigation.
there are challenges, but that we're believe the state.
I mean, this
continue
is going to
addressing
be an
those.
interesting one as the discussion, so you'll have to listen and, you know.
I think what we did at our workshop tonight was good. If
Right. That could be mirrored in the state
Right.
level.
In the State House, right?
So local control will be big on that. Special education reform. This is really about, and Ryan and I talk about this a lot, don't we, Ryan? So this is really putting a task force together to really talk about how special ed and general ed can be more integrated and controlling that. It's not these special ed funds are for only special ed and general's only for general and teachers only work with these students, but pushing that dual certification, because that is a challenge right now around hiring and how when a teacher is dually certified, they can meet the needs of all the students in the classroom. So, you know, this is going to be one where you can see this is really a task force that met. They had a lot of recommendations that were set forward to remove barriers between the two, to really push on response to intervention. We do a really great job in Auburn. Ryan and I will powwow. We will go into schools. We will assist to really understand and support both general and special ed, especially a student who we know is struggling and is not a special ed student, and really using Ryan's expertise and the special ed teacher's expertise to help support general ed. So we have to be a family, to support all of our students. So this is what this is getting at, is really working together to be more collaborative in our model when addressing students. It shouldn't just be us and them, it's we are doing this together. So that's why they're asking for support on those special ed regulations, looking for reform on that. And of course, the funding. And they did improve the funding. Remember, we got a major bump in funding last year with the state's new formula. So they recognize it, and this is just to reinforce that.
Bob?
All set? Everybody all set with this one?
Yep.
Kind of falls in a lot of what we've been talking about.
Right.
Starting teachers' pay. Remember when it went to $30,000? Now it's looking for $40,000. And what they're talking about is instead of 175 instructional days, it would be 180 instructional days and 10 days for professional development. This will have impact on budgets. We are at 36,000 approximately. Adam, I'm looking at you. I think it's 36 something as our starting pay. So it was similar when we went to 30,000. There was a word I'm looking for, a phase-in. There it comes. A phase-in to get there. So you didn't have to get there in 1 year. You could phase in to get yourself to the 40,000. But this is recognizing a need to raise teacher pay, also raise instructional time and professional development time.
Bob?
I'm all set.
Faith?
Down here, Pat?
I'd like to
Dan?
see you around.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that kind of a plan. I really think that this would fix a lot of problems. And
When we went to the 30,000, didn't the state provide a stipend to cover that difference, I believe?
Yes.
They did.
They tried to bridge it in as,
Right, they tried to bridge it in so that we could step up that. Are they suggesting, or at least it doesn't suggest it in here, that the state would continue to fund that in a similar manner so that we could progressively get there? But to me, that would be a consideration.
I think this is to start a conversation. They're saying they would like the state to be considering this as they move forward.
It does mention supporting a law change calling for additional state funding to support it. So there is a piece of that in there.
And it's also looking for 180 instructional days.
Right, 180 instructional days.
So we support this or not?
I do.
I see two different things in here. I see changing the starting pay and adding the days. So my colleagues are going to say, if you're adding 5 more days here and 5 more professional days, then, you know,
Well, I think what they're saying is the 40,000 comes with more days. So if Adam did 36,000 divided by 175, what's that per diem?
The difference in the two per diems they're proposing here is a 30% increase.
Correct. So
Factor in
a starting teacher, though, at 36,175, what would be their
what's their
starting
per diem?
pay with 5 more days? Yeah. So let's see, 50 times 5, that's 1,500.
37,000.
Yeah. So there's obviously districts that are above 40,000 with starting. This is to help those that are not there get there, which we are one of them that is not. Right.
I guess I support.
I don't know how many, that might be what comes up, is how many school districts are already at the 40 and how many need to be brought up. Mm-hmm.
So I support bringing the beginning starting pay up, but I would also hope that you would encourage them to do something to reimburse teachers that are getting 10 more days added to their year. All the other teachers.
Right. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Right.
I do know what you're saying.
Yeah,
well,
but-
you would.
And I think
You would
you
have
would.
to.
It would be
You'd move the
scaled,
steps
right?
up anyway.
The steps would change.
Everybody would get increased, right?
Yeah.
We have 8 professional days, so this is
This is
10, that's 2,
two
so we're
more,
adding
yeah.
7 days total to our teachers.
Yeah.
So everybody would get that, and then the starting
Right.
would go up to 40.
As
yes.
long as that was
Yeah.
determined, that's.
That would be a local, yes.
Right.
So we all support this one? The
Sounds
longer
like
school
yes,
day and
yes.
the-
Bob?
He was good.
Yep, with state support for the increases.
Yeah, it would run through the formula. They'd have to run the formula at a higher average, yes. School attendance, now this is an interesting, there's a lot of big ones in this. This has been a long, well, several years. And I have to tell you, I struggle with this one myself, because you can change a law isn't going to change what the barriers and the issues are. Okay, so right now with absenteeism, students are required to attend school at the age of 7. Students in Maine are not required to attend pre-K nor kindergarten. Okay, they do attend, and right now their attendance rate is not. Well, it is now, they just told us. Kindergarten attendance rate will be part of our chronic absenteeism, which you'll talk more when we get to the MEA data and report cards for what used to be No Child Left Behind, that's now every student's success to succeed. I know it's late tonight, but you know what I mean. And so this is to push that the law, the attendance age be shifted down to 5, which will also probably push for the attendance requirements at 5. So yes, we should require kids to attend, and then what is that going to mean in supporting our families with attendance for that age group? So this is to lower our recommended age 5 for kindergarten being state, and the attendance at age 6, so going from 7 to 6. We have a lot of challenges with absenteeism, and it does start at an early age, and I know we don't need a law to recognize that and hold accountable, but I also know it's important to have law when you're also addressing it. So this is a big one. This is a hot topic, and so.
Just clarify, so when you say you have a big problem with absenteeism, are you saying that they're not even enrolling the child in school, or they're enrolling and they're not coming?
Well, they're enrolling, and then, with chronically absent is 10 absentees, and they struggle sometimes to have their kids in every single day. Now, I don't think people understand that they don't have to send, I don't think it's because there isn't a law.
Right, so I didn't realize the law was at 7. So
Right,
technically I didn't have
exactly.
to sign my kid up for school until they're 7.
Correct.
So
That
I
is
didn't
correct.
know that.
Right.
Is there such a thing as a truant officer anymore?
Our assistant superintendent is the truant officer, who works close in hand with Lieutenant Kugel from the police department and with administrators, because there is law on truancy. There are letters have to be sent, meetings have to be set, citations that have to be delivered, plans that have to be made, And as we all know, a lot of absence has to do with a lot of things that may be going on in that child's life. And that's when you have the need for social workers, for wraparound services. People bend over backwards a lot of the time, you know, picking students up, providing snacks, food. I mean, there's a lot of things that this is. But there, you know, I think people would like to have some teeth to say your students by law need to be in, your children need to be in school. So that's what this is recommending.
And not to mention that it's a safer, well, I'm not going to make assumptions, but it's probably a safe place for them to be,
right,
where they're fed and taken care of and learning.
Right.
And interacting.
Interacting. I'm for it because I thought it was 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Bob?
I can't believe that the Maine state law doesn't require kids to go to school till age 7.
Right.
That's archaic.
Right. Well, that's why it's coming forward.
right.
So I'm hearing support for that.
Everybody? Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Sounded like school was in session.
Yeah, it did, that's the school bell, Dan?
Finances.
Yeah. Finance report?
We met on Monday morning, and we reviewed the finance report for 9/1 to 9/30. We are a quarter of the year through, believe it or not. We had good discussions. We reviewed this special ed main care reimbursement. We talked about tuition at Franklin. And we talked about RETC, SOS, and what we were going to do with that program, what we might do with that program. It's very valuable, but we need to look at it again. We discussed bus drivers a little bit and how we needed to get 3 more. We had a presentation by the after-school program, and Sarah Levine was there, and she did a fantastic job. That is moving right along, and the school that we've always been really fearful of, that it was not meeting the needs, was Sherwood, and they are above where they were last year, and they're actually in the black this year.
Great.
In the black this year. So we were really pleased with that. She has a good program. It's not the program that started 6, 7, 8 years ago anymore. It's not just going in and sitting and running around or having a snack. She has developed some courses, some interests for the kids in the programs, which is good. And if she does a knitting class at Sherwood, she does it at all. She's currently doing karate, and they're doing it at all schools. So, and the cost is 0 to the parents. So that's a big plus for that program. We talked about, that's the RETC. Let's see. We looked at leverage learning. Mr. Kendall, I'm very pleased to hear that there is a leverage learning. I hadn't heard too much about it this year. So we discussed that a little bit, and we wanted to know what was happening with it. So we are in good shape. We're concerned about the 0 increase that the mayor wants on it. So we're in good shape right now with our revenue and our expenses. Our salary situation has begun to catch up with us, so that now we're paying teachers, whereas for 3 months we didn't have to really, or 2 months we didn't have to.
Just to make,
Well, yeah.
just to be clear, we did
are
pay
paying
them.
Right, for the
But
contract.
it was accrued to last year's
Right,
budget.
right.
Until September.
Right, we paid them, but not to this budget, right, on it. So we are in good shape.
So what was the discussion RETC?
That's to come later on it. We are going to, the director has left, I believe.
Yes, he
Right.
did. He was
So
here.
that will come later of what's going to happen with that.
I see.
They're probably watching the tuition.
We are,
Yes,
yeah.
students' tuition. Yeah.
So we're not getting as many students from out of district?
In SOS, we're not getting out out of district schools sending in. We're
Mostly
getting,
Lewiston, Auburn.
it's mostly Auburn kids that are coming in, my understanding is, and that we don't have a lot of tuition students right now. So we need to think about how we're going to refund that program and do with it.
And we just talked generally, the thing that's come up many times before, do we merge RETC and SOS or do we not? And would that help all stakeholders or could it hurt any stakeholders? And so it's something we'll take a look at later in the year.
Right. We just want to remind everybody that sends the kids to school with hot lunch or with money for hot lunch, be sure you pay your bill, because we're just like any other school district. We are in arrears for some money. So pay your bills.
Yes, please pay your bills.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I need a motion to approve the finance report as presented.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any further questions for Bonnie or Faith? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. All right, committee report. Elfrida, have we got something from the city council that pertains to the schools?
No, nothing that pertains to the school that I can think. Oh, there's one. It's my question. I was wondering what we're doing, the schools are doing for Veterans Day. That's a nice opportunity to honor our veterans. Is there a plan to do something at each of the schools, or?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
Usually Park Avenue has a program.
I can check.
Park Avenue does, yes.
Usually
I can
Park
check to see
Avenue
what's
does.
going on.
Okay, it would be good, just,
Yeah,
Scott has one?
I'll write that, I'll get some information. I will send you an email with what I'll send an email out and ask, okay?
That's great, thank
Yeah,
you very much.
you're welcome.
This is a once-a-year opportunity. We have so many more veterans now. And just, the city is looking to, just to raise revenues, to be able to have a good tax base, and we keep, building buildings where it's a match to income, but I was very pleased to see that we have approved building a market value apartment building that's going to be set right across from the St. Mary's Emergency Room there. So that's a perfect place to have it. It really is. It's got this right in the intersection. So it's great to have market value apartments.
Is that over at Grace Lawn, in front of Grace Lawn, actually?
Right in that big spot.
Right.
Yeah, right in
Right.
that intersection.
Is it it's market value, so it's not workforce?
Not workforce, nope. And we need more market value.
It's 48.
We really do, and that's the push right now.
I don't know if I sent this to you or not, but I did go to that planning board meeting and shared, I should have done this at communication. And I went to the planning board and did share with them enrollment numbers at all the schools and class sizes at all schools, and did raise concern that that apartment complex was going in the East Auburn School Department. They are 1 to 2 bedroom, but that doesn't mean there won't be children. So they understood that. I will be regularly attending the pre-planning board meetings where all departments are. And Evan Sear, who is the chair of the planning board, we're working on a project for the planning board to look at all the new housing, single family and units, and what the impact has been on enrollment in the different districts. The concern, the Minot Avenue one is next to Fairview, is all workforce development.
Workforce,
there are zero market value.
A lot of kids there.
So there was some discussion on transit. So there is a discussion around balance of what kind of housing is being approved. So I did attend the planning board because I saw that come up, and I thought, I don't know how much they consider impact on schools.
Right, I know, that's a good point.
Because that's in East Auburn.
That's a really good, yeah.
So,
That's a
but
good
we're
point.
keeping an eye, we're working together, and we're talking about
Good.
those things.
Good. Really quickly, there are a number of small businesses that are opening up, and I encourage people to frequent those businesses and to support them, because they are bringing tax base to our city. Christie's Cafe on Minot Avenue is going to have a ribbon cutting on Friday, the 26th of this month, at 1 o'clock. So and there's hourly giveaways and menu specials. And there's a cafe that opened up finally at the library. There's a cafe at the bottom. It's really close nearby, and nice owner. What a sweet man he is, and he's really kind. So so they're starting small, and they're going to add more stuff to, to their menu. But I found it to be really pleasant. So it's nice to see a few of these. And also for the streets, Raleigh's Diner is going to be having on October 23rd discussion about the intersections here, and need to make them better and safer. And so there's a lot going on with that, and there's a lot in the plans for that. So I would encourage, if you're interested in that, it would be good to attend. But it also, our streets have, you probably have noticed a lot of streets have been repaved. In fact, they've probably been, a lot of them just dug up, because it's been so long since we repaired these streets that they needed to be completely dug up, and the whole foundation put in, and then put in the tar and stuff. But my concern is that now we're seeing trucks, big semis, hot trucks, other trucks, they're using shortcuts because they like those streets, because they're easier to drive on, but it's making it dangerous for the neighborhood, because they shouldn't be on these secondary roads. So if you or anybody out there, public, sees any of these trucks going on roads that they shouldn't be on, please call and report it to probably the city manager. Actually, Phil Crowell.
Public Works.
Probably Phil Crowell.
It's Public Works.
Public Works? Yeah, okay. Well, it should be Public Works, but if there are issues and concerns, the assistant manager has been assigned with dealing with the problems. So, and that's Phil Crowell. So he would be the one that I would call first. And so hopefully we can, I don't know what we're going to be doing, because I talked about it at the city council meeting the other night, saying either we need signage up there, or something, we need to communicate with Google or Google Maps, whatever, or the companies, to say you cannot be driving on these, because before you know it, we will have to repair the roads again.
Actually, my concern more is Goff Hill.
Oh, yeah.
The tractor trailers are not to go up.
I know.
And they do.
Yes.
They come down, and they go up and down.
Yeah.
On it, and it's a nightmare. I watch an Auburn school bus go by, and my heart's in my throat.
God, it's unbelievable.
So that's more concern. We also have to remember, for you to take back, is that there is a very large transportation company in town, and they do pay good taxes.
Yeah,
so we need to be
But they work with us.
Yes, they
when
do.
we see that they're going on roads and they're not supposed to, we have discussions, then they very willingly comply, that's what we want to do. We want to have that. Thank you.
Bob, this is your chance to ask Elfrida your question earlier.
What question?
I don't really want to get into a long discussion at this point. The baseball game is about to start. But I think it is premature for the mayor to call for zero taxes without us going through what our needs are.
I would echo that as well, Bob, but.
Thank you, Bob. It's not acceptable.
Bonnie, you have an addendum more or less to the city council situation on the strategic plan, perhaps?
Yes, the strategic plan committee met on last Thursday night, and I was lucky enough to be able to go because the chair was gone, and they had requested chairs or co-chairs to come, and it was very interesting. Out of 22 co-chairs or chairs that could have been there were 11 attending. On it, the strategic plan committee is a committee that the manager has formed to look at what we can do before we begin the comprehensive plan on it, what we need to do on it. So it was very interesting to listen. Frida was there, and it was very interesting to listen. There are 3 committees. It starts with a big committee, and that committee will accept applications to be on that committee. And then there's another committee, and then there are 3 other committees on it. And the school department, I was overwhelmed with the reception that the school department needed to be represented more and more.
Yep.
Phil Crowell must have said this 20 times to me on it, along with Liz Allen. So I'm on one committee, and my committee doesn't meet until April or March on it. There are 2 other places, 2 other committees that do need school board members on it.
And I sent that, I sent that out. Bonnie had asked me, sent that out.
So
Do they have a meeting scheduled yet?
they do have meeting schedules. I don't have it with me, but there are.
No, I don't.
There are meeting schedules that are all lined out. It's going to be very aggressive and very fast. The first
Yes.
one starts in November, I think, on it. And the first committee, you'll meet 4 times in a month, very aggressive. And the first and second committee will also meet together sometimes. And then it goes on. The second committee is as aggressive, and they will meet with and without the first one. The third one meets in April, and it sort of summarizes everything that has been done or will have been done on it. So if you're interested in the big committee, call City Hall.
I'd say Liz Allen is.
Call Liz
Yeah, I
Allen.
think Liz Allen is collecting names.
Right, and do the application for that. If you're interested in being on the other 2 committees, are you on one?
I'm sure I'll be invited to be on them. I've already had one meeting, but I was in the small group one. So
Okay.
I'm not sure where
Because
I land.
they're encouraging the superintendent
Yes.
to be there too.
Right.
On it. So we need at least one more, if not 2, depending upon what your status is on it. So at least one more, if not 2 more people to be on it. It's going to be a good thing for the city of Auburn. It's going to help us figure out what we need to do and where we need to go. So it's
It's a
good
big
thing.
plan, it's the big plan, and
Yep.
it's good because we're reflecting on the comprehensive plan from almost, was 8 years ago. So this is actually going to inform the next 10 years of a comprehensive plan, and then strategic plan, and then the work group, which is like an annual. So it's great to be working together on that because we have to look at this city through all of our eyes, and this definitely includes the school. So, because that was mentioned in that previous comprehensive plan. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's very powerful when you take a look at how it's been
I'm
arranged.
hoping that'll be powerful, just so that everybody realizes that the city manager, when he was manager of Cumberland County, he did this for the Cumberland County section on it. A little different here because he was able to draw on all kinds of towns, all the towns in Cumberland County to send representatives. Here, he's drawing on departments and citizens to send representatives on it. But it was very interesting, and it's preparing the city for the comprehensive plan.
Yep.
It was very interesting to see and hear what we have done as a city on the comprehensive plan. A lot of people say, oh, we haven't done anything, but actually when it was listed out, we have done quite a bit to accomplish it. So it was really good.
Yeah. And that's getting back to the celebrating the gains
Right,
from what we
right.
talked about a little earlier. So
Right.
that's what's great.
So if you're interested, I guess you're going to talk to Katie?
Well, I sent the email to you, so if you don't have it or you need it, I'll forward it to you again. But Liz Allen is the person you should contact.
And it should be on the website.
And
You
I don't
should
mind
have-
if you send it to me too, it's fine. Yep.
So you said you needed 2 for the big committee and.
No, 2 for, the big committee is a application
It's a
process.
steering committee.
It's a
There,
steering
I'd
committee,
have to
and
look
it's
it up.
an application process to the steering committee.
So you don't need any from us on that?
Not unless you want to apply for it.
You can.
You can,
Right.
you certainly can. And then there's 3 others that are broken down. Is there another one in between?
That's why I'm
No,
looking them up.
there's just
think
3
there
others.
was another one.
Three that you
3 others, and then there's the 4 on the bottom. So there are
3 on
many
the bottom.
places where you can go.
How
You
many-
need to just take a look at it, take a look at the website, and you'll see the model. I'm sorry, I don't have
I
it.
don't have
with
mine
me.
either with me.
No.
But it's,
I'm bringing it up in a minute.
go onto the website and look and see. It's a commitment. It's 4 nights straight out on it, and then a meeting again to decide.
Be good to have a school committee member on each one of them.
I'm on
what
the
they would
third one.
like.
I'm on the last one.
I'm on 2 of them.
I would normally be stepping forward on this. My interest is certainly there, but I have a family medical commitment over the next month that may be conflicting, as I understand the schedule being fairly aggressive, that I'm not even going to be in town, so I've been unable to attend. I'm going to request the If they have scheduled meeting dates at this point, I'll take a look at those, as I would like to serve on those meetings, but I have a family obligation that I'm.
There are plenty after this first month, and a couple of the months to go.
There are 3 committees. One is growth, development, and grow our city. Auburn will be a community that balances urban and rural living with safe, sustainable, livable neighborhoods that are well connected. The next committee is quality, enhance our quality of life. Auburn will be a community to be proud of with a vibrant workforce and resources that are preserved and protected. Invest in our future. Auburn will be a unique small city that offers quality education and bold economic, recreation, and housing opportunities. You're on invest. So we're looking for someone on growth and someone on quality. So if you're interested in either one of those, growth or quality, just let me know.
Do they have dates at all?
They have no, there were no dates.
On that.
Oh, yes, there were. Okay. There's for, I'm going to go down here. For the growth one, they start November 29th is the launch, and then December 13th, January 3rd, January 17th, January 31st.
Budget time.
In pre-budget. Quality is meeting December 13th, January 3rd, January 17th, and January 31st.
Day of the week.
Thursdays.
I'm not sure.
Yes, they're Thursdays.
So I
have
sent
any
this,
other nights.
why don't I just resend it?
Yes,
And then I'll resend it, and then you'll have it again.
All right.
All right.
Committee curriculum, Pat, either of your committees, CLC or curriculum met?
No, but the Share Center meets every month.
Then the Share Center?
Yeah. They've done a budget for the year that covers most of their expenses. They had to, I mentioned last time, they had to purchase a pod to put some of their storage things in because they lost storage space in Turner. And Lisa had a very successful yard sale during the Dempsey Challenge. She made over $1,400. And that will cover just about the expenses for that pod for a year. She is very concerned about losing their space in the Bates Mill. And it's so serious enough that if they lose it, they may not be able to continue their work. So she's looking for more fundraising ideas, anyone who's a grant writer or knows where to find grants. She's also still looking for a storefront or a location that will give them more space. She has 3 new schools that have joined, and one is in Skowhegan, and because there's already one up there, there's a possibility that they could expand into that area. And anybody who wants to volunteer or help with special initiatives, they're always looking for help. So that was it from this month.
All right, any questions for Pat? The New EL Building Committee, I was not able to attend that yesterday on this medical issue. Bonnie, you had?
We did. The subcommittees met last night. There was the athletic committee, subcommittee, the performing arts subcommittee, and the sustainability committee met last night. We broke into groups. We met early. We met at staggered times. We came up with priorities that we think might be useful when we go to the forum for the referendum on priorities that we're asking the community to support with us local only. So we came up with some good ideas. The performing arts is right on it. They are so excited on it. The sustainability, Mr. Kendall's favorite committee. We've narrowed down fuel cells, thank God. So we're moving ahead on that one. And Scott was at the other one, the athletic, right? And I take that back. There's the 4th one with the communications. And were you two the only there?
And Beth Favor.
And Beth. And how did you do? Because I didn't hear.
Oh, we couldn't be more outstanding, could we, Adam?
We were excellent.
I mean, we were excellent.
On it. November 15th is the forum. Right, Katie?
Yes, those are the notes.
November 15th is the forum 6 to 8. It is at Edward Little High School, In case you didn't know that, Scott.
Yes, in case you didn't know that, they wanted to move it to EL.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't get to tell you that this morning.
So, surprise. So that's on the 15th. On January 23rd, we're going to have an update on the, we're having a public forum with an update on the project prior to the school committee approval. All right, so.
So the next public forum is, I think, going to be a really good event. All the subcommittees will be presenting, and the community members, what we're picturing is using dots again and letting community members weigh in on what they feel is most important to them to inform the subcommittees moving forward on the design concept. So it should be a good one to hear what the thoughts are, and then giving them feedback as they continue to work with Harriman around the design concept. So there's a lot coming forward.
And how are we making the community aware that this is happening?
I will be sending that beautiful postcards that are sent
Awesome.
out
Thank
2
you.
weeks ahead. Welcome.
Very good. And negotiations, Bonnie?
Negotiations started yesterday for the teachers union. It was interesting. We have a new president of the Auburn Teachers Association, Shane Gilbert, and he's very good, very new and very willing. And of course we have Bill Riley back, and he's very good and very keeps us on task. And then the MEA sent their representative, Amanda, to be there with us, and that was very interesting and very good. And Adam and Katie and I, we missed our chair, Tom. We are going to take a course on interest-based negotiation with them. We're going to do a little kumbaya and have dinner and go from there with them. And it's going to be very interesting to see if we continue with interest-based.
So what we're planning is we'll have an executive session, probably our meeting in December, to go over goals for negotiations as we kick off that process. So they're working on collecting information from their members. We're going to work on collecting information from administration and from the school board to help the negotiations set that teamwork.
What else you got, Tom? I think I'm done.
But we may have to. I don't know. The workshops aren't there.
Yeah. All right, our upcoming meetings are a regular meeting on November 7th, which will again be a workshop prior to that, starting at 6. Are we going to do?
Yeah, so at 6 o'clock, I'm gonna let you have a heads up. We are gonna do similar to tonight. We will do Michelle with a couple of her steering committee members. We'll do an update on the PEPG, which is the teacher effectiveness, just to update where we are so that you understand that is a law. That doesn't get talked about as much as the proficiency-based diploma law. But this is the teacher effectiveness work, and then we will move into the data. So Sue Doris is working with administrators and her literacy team to talk about our data that's coming through. We have our MEA results, but they will not be public until probably 2 days before the school committee workshop. So we will be covering the universal screening data, the MEA data in that workshop. So it will still go from 6 to 7:30 so that we can cover both those topics in November, the first meeting in November.
So there won't be any baseball games.
I don't.
Well, they probably will not. Oh, well, November, no. Well, maybe. Who knows how long those series goes? Yeah.
And there's
never
no
know.
Wednesday night footballs.
No Wednesday night. So we still hold this schedule because our third workshop, our final workshop, is on teacher effectiveness, and I thought it'd be important to do the data as well during the workshop. Okay.
There was a question about whether we will have a November 20th.
Yeah, I didn't think that was on our calendar, but We'll have to talk
on the
that
agenda.
out.
We'll confirm that. on
Yeah,
our
I
next meeting.
had not planned for that date, but that doesn't mean we might not need it.
Okay.
We got a lot going on.
We have a lot going on.
No executive session, any information for future agenda items for Katie or myself? No. I accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor? Declare us
Okay,
adjourned.
thank
Very
you.
good. Bob?
Got to get Bob to Gipper's.